Subscribe to my sister's channel. She will also voice her favorite plots. Let's give her a big asset. A few months before the Kubi attack on the village, the home of the future great fourth Hokage Namikaze Minato, and at the moment an elite Chunin nicknamed Yellow Lightning Konoha. It was the 4th month of his wife's pregnancy, Uzumaki Kushina, and the happy married couple, sitting at the table, discussed the extremely important question for any future parents: and what will we call our son? Minato asked, carefully wrapping his arm around her waist. Kushina recently told her husband about the upcoming replenishment of the Namikaze clan. And why the son? The expectant mother was rightly indignant. Maybe there will be a girl? And I say boy. The blonde man objected, smiling. Okay, let the boy be the first, Kushina agreed. Well, if you agree, then here's what I want to say. Jiraiya-sensei recently gave me his first book, The Way of the True Shinobi, so in it the main character is exactly what I would like to see my son, and therefore I propose to name him after the main character of this book, Naruto. A few days later, Jiraiya came to their house and invited Minato to the residence with him, saying that Hokage was calling him. On the way, Minato started a conversation. By the way, Jiraiya-sensei, I know what Kushina and I will call our son. Yes, and how? Naruto, a few minutes later at the residence. Congratulations, Minato-san. Or should I call you Yondaime? Sarutobi Dano, stop it. I am not very pleased to hear such an appeal from you. Yes, Minato, you still managed to get around me. Congratulations, it was an honest victory, hissed Orochimaru, who was also there. That's how Orochi, my student, did what I couldn't do, surpassed your genius. Jiraiya exclaimed extremely contentedly, causing everyone present to laugh. It's been about 2 months, it's time to give birth. There were 4 people in a secret bunker not far from Konoha: Minato, holding the seal, Shinobi A medic from ANBU, Tadzi taking delivery, the wife of Komura's advisor, Biwako as a representative of the authorities, and of course Kushina herself. The birth went well, the Kyuubi was restrained and everyone was already breathing freely, but then something happened that no one expected. A man appeared in a strange orange mask in the form of a spiral with a single slit for the eye. And in this slot Minato saw what he least wanted to see, the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. This man knocked out Taji and Biwako in a split second, taking the newborn Naruto from them and putting a kunai to his small neck, said, "Fourth step away from Jinchuriki, otherwise your son will die before he has lived an hour." Who are you? What do you need? Who am I? It doesn't matter. What do I need? I need Kyuubi and the lives of all the inhabitants of this village. You will not get either one or the other, Minato exclaimed and instantly moved to take away his son from the unknown. Deciding not to put the child in danger, the 4th immediately moved home, where he put his son in the crib and hurried back. However, he was too late. A huge figure of a fox with red-orange fur, with red eyes divided into halves by black pupils, was already towering over the area of the forest where the bunker was located. Wasting no time, Yellow Lightning teleported to the seal on Kushina's body and at the last moment managed to carry her away from the impact of the 9-tailed paw. After delivering the barely alive Kushina to his son, Minato headed to Konoha, where he immediately had to use the space-time barrier in order to repel the blow of the Biju bomb, which was supposed to wipe the village off the face of the earth. And just when he thought about getting away from the village, taking the 9-tailed one with him, the unknown man in the mask turned out to be next to him. The 4th tried to stab him with a kunai, but the knife just went through him. Minato was so stunned by this that he barely managed to escape from the influence of the strange spatial technique of the masked man. Having moved to the forest, not far from the village, I immediately realized that it would not work to escape. The owner of the Sharingan used spatial techniques no worse than him. Having come to the conclusion that it would not be possible to deal with the fox without first defeating the masochist, Minato attacked again using his signature technique, which no one could repeat, the flight of the thunder god. However, the attack again simply passed through his opponent's body. The only chance to win is to anticipate the actions of his opponent. Realizing this fact, the fourth began to form a Rasengan while simultaneously throwing one of his special kunai at the enemy. The opponent dematerialized, avoiding the knife, and yellow lightning immediately moved to the kunai, being close to the opponent, who again became material and hit him with a Rasengan, while simultaneously putting a paralyzing seal on the owner of the Sharingan, thereby depriving him of control over the kubi. The masochist flew a short distance away, immediately stood up and said, "You really deserve the title of Hokage. You were able to hit me and even interrupt my control over the fox. However, I have already achieved my goal, so goodbye to Namikaze." Minato. Having said that, the masked guy disappeared using his spatial technique. The fourth took a deep breath and realizing that he had no time at all returned to the village, where the nine-tailed was forming another Biju bomb. Taking the fox with him, Minato again moved further into the forest, disappeared for a few moments, and reappeared with his wife and child. Kushina immediately tied Kyubi with chains from the chakra so that he would not dig. Without wasting time, Namikaze said, "Kushina, put up a barrier. We have no choice, we just have to reprint the kubi. My body was badly damaged during its extraction, and I haven't had time to restore the chakra yet. I can't stand the sealing." "I know, so I'll use Shiki Fujin, the seal of the god of death. Only she is strong enough to seal the Kyubi into our son without killing him at the same time. However, I don't have much chakra left, so you'll have to help me. We have to do this for the sake of the village and the whole country of fire." "In Naruto? You're crazy. He's our son, and you want to condemn him to such suffering as being a Jinchuriki? And an orphan, too? Is there really no other way out?" "There is no other way out. No one but our son can withstand the might of the nine tails. I will seal a little of our chakra together with the fox so that we can see our son again someday. As for suffering, yes, his life will not be easy, but I believe in him. I believe that he will cope and become a wonderful shinobi and a good person, because he is our son. And I'm sure Jiraiya and Tsunade will take care of him." Having finished, the fourth saw that his wife had fainted and the chains holding the fox began to disappear. "This is bad, there is no time at all," Namikaze thought and called Gamabunta, telling him to hold the kubi while he performs the technique. Without even being distracted by the Toad boss's questions, he began to put the seal of the technique: snake, boar, ram, bird, dog, rat, rooster, bull, snake, Shiki Fujin. Minato exclaimed, calling Shinigami. "What do you want, mortal? Why did you summon me?" I heard the fourth voice of Shinigami in my head. "I will give my life and my wife's life, as well as our chakra, for you to seal the kubi into our son without causing him any harm." Yellow Lightning replied to the god of death. "Okay, I agree," whispered Shinigami, and the fox began to pull into the baby's body. "Damn you, fourth!" shouted Kyubi. 6 streams of chakra tore the skin of the cheeks and left cracks on the cheekbones of the little boy. The baby started crying. No one was given to understand what he was experiencing. The infernal pain from the mixing of the chakra, the difficult adaptation of the demonic essence. If he were older, he would have gone crazy, but as it was, he just closed his eyes and fell silent. "Goodbye, son, grow strong and know that Mom and I love you," Minato whispered and died, because Shinigami finished sealing, and swinging his sword cut off the souls of Naruto's parents, absorbed them and disappeared, leaving the baby alone lying in a clearing surrounded by the bodies of his dead father and mother. The flight of the thunder god is a unique technique combining the element of lightning, seal techniques and space-time techniques. The technique requires special kunai. The functionality of the technique is as follows. Shinobi can use this technique to move to print at supersonic speed at any distance. At the same time, the distance does not matter. In principle, it flies through space and time. For this technique, the user creates a space-time window in which he is able to move at will and hit his opponents with weapons or techniques that do not require seals, Rasengan. PS seals are needed for orientation. When moving with the help of a space-time window, human senses are useless, so he feels the world through seals, as if he sees everything within a radius of 1 meter from each seal. The only user and creator of this technique was Namikaze Minato, and he could use more than 50 seals at the same time, single-handedly destroying this technique whole detachments of the enemy. Konoha is a hidden village of the Land of Fire, about 4 years after the Kubi attack on the village. On the road leading to the village, hidden in foliage, surrounded by huge trees, along the branches of which it was so convenient and so fast to jump, during the mission, a man of 40 years old was walking. This man had long, waist-length dark hair, bright yellow eyes with vertical pupils surrounded by purple circles, very pale skin and sharp facial features. In the ears, earrings in the shape of tomo. But most of all, when watching him, his tongue caught the eye. It was unusually long, and it was very easy to notice, since this man very often licked his thin, purple-tinged lips. A knowledgeable person would immediately recognize in this man one of the strongest shinobi in the world, the great snake Sannin Konoha and the best student of the third Hokage, Orochimaru. You are probably wondering why such a strong shinobi slowly and unhurriedly walks along the road like a simple person, and does not rush straight through the branches of trees. The answer is simple. Now Sannin was not on a mission, but on the contrary was returning home to Konoha. After another single mission of rank A and not wanting to hurry, he leisurely walked, indulging in thoughts about his latest experiment, attempts to transplant someone else's Kekii Genkai, improved genome, to a person. The great Sannin could not understand in any way what his mistake was, because theoretically the experiment went strictly according to plan, but not a single subject has survived so far. He was so engrossed in his thoughts that he did not notice how he reached the entrance to the village hidden in the foliage. The huge, almost always wide-open green gates decorated with red hieroglyphs have not changed at all in the few weeks that he was gone. After greeting several chunins carrying guards at the gate, Sannin walked through the gate and headed towards the main and tallest building in the village decorated with the hieroglyph Fire, the residence of his sensei the great third Hokage, to report on the successful completion of the mission. But he did not manage to calmly reach the Hokage residence. A child of about 4 years old dressed in a dirty and torn black t-shirt with a spiral and orange shorts ran into him. The child had extremely unruly, straw-colored hair and bright blue eyes, as well as 6 extremely remarkable stripes on the cheeks strongly resembling whiskers like those of animals belonging to the cat or dog families. In this child, Orochimaru recognized the son of his main rival, who beat him in the competition for the title of the 4th Hokage, who died 4 years ago, Namikaze Minato, and concurrently the main weapon of the village, Jinchuriki Kubi. A whole crowd of stupid people, villagers and several heavily drunk shinobi were chasing the child, shouting something in the spirit of, "Catch the demon. Let's avenge our relatives and friends. Let's kill him." The great Orochimaru did 2 things at the same time without hesitation. With one hand he picked up the baby without letting him fall, and with the other he folded the seal of concentration and directed a wave of ki filled with a thirst for murder at the crowd running towards him. After such a suggestion, the crowd instantly dispersed. The hardest in spirit ran away, most of them slowly dispersed, trembling with horror, but the weak-willed simply fell unconscious. Sannin, ignoring them, put the boy on his feet and told him to go home. However, the kid did not think to obey and instead asked, "Who are you? What is your name? And most importantly, How did you do it? Sannin was taken aback for a moment by such a stream of questions, but still answered, "My name is Orochimaru, I am a great snake Sannin and a disciple of the third Hokage." Anticipating your next question, I immediately explain, "The great snake Sannin means that I am one of the 3 strongest shinobi in this village and that I can summon snakes to help me." I will answer your third question like this: if you become as strong a shinobi as I am, you can do the same. Well, now let's run home, I have no time to chat with you, I need to go to the Hokage. After finishing his speech, Orochimaru just turned around and walked towards the residence, thinking about what's wrong. Oh, not how the son of the 4th great Hokage and the heir of 2 great clans should live. Arriving at the residence, Orochimaru immediately went upstairs to the Hokage's office and without even knocking, went inside. An old man of 60 years old was sitting at the desk in the office. Orochimaru himself was 42 years old at that time, and while smoking a pipe, he was sorting through documents that, as always, his desk was piled up to the top. Noticing the newcomer, he looked up from his papers and turned to Sannin, "And this is you, Orochimaru. I see you've already returned, so tell me how the task went." "And good morning to you, Sarutobi-sensei," said Orochimaru, giving out his trademark grin and simultaneously licking his unnaturally long tongue. "The mission went well, the task was completed, the client was satisfied." "Don't mock, Orochimaru, what a good morning. I've been raking these paper piles for the 5th hour, and they don't decrease," Sarutobi exclaimed, trying to refill his pipe and light it up. "Come on, Sarutobi-sensei, deep down you like your work," Orochimaru continued to mock, grinning. "Better tell me, were there any excesses? Have you noticed anything suspicious?" The third one decided to translate the topic, furiously puffing on his pipe. "No, sensei, nothing suspicious, no excesses, nothing even boring somehow." "Well, since it's boring, can Genins give you a team?" Sarutobi Hiruzen asked, smiling broadly. "You'll see, it will be fun again and there will be less free time and you'll do something useful." "No way. Anko and I had enough for the eyes. For a week I celebrated her receiving the rank of Chunin and, consequently, the end of these dreary missions of ranks C and D. So no, please, if I want to take a student, I will choose him myself." Extremely emotionally, even ceasing to grin and lick his lips, Sannin replied, trying to pull an expression of horror on his face. You don't do anything between missions anyway, so Anko would help with further training." "No, sensei, I've been bored to hell with her for these 1.5 years, I gave her the base, so let her develop further." "And what makes you think that I don't do anything between assignments? Maybe I'm thinking about the eternal? You still write a philosophical treatise. Okay, do you have any more questions or am I going back to work?" "No, sensei, I have everything. I will hand over a detailed report on the completed mission tomorrow in writing. Can I be free?" The third only nodded absent-mindedly, releasing Orochimaru. His mind was already back in the world of bureaucracy. Seeing this, Sannin just grinned and left the office, anticipating the continuation of experiments in his secret laboratory under the village and thinking, can he really make a masked clone write a philosophical treatise? 2 weeks have passed since Orochimaru returned from his mission. He spent almost all this time in his secret laboratory, leaving a shadow clone at home instead of himself, who still began to write a treatise on the topic. Is there any meaning in shinobi's life? The great Sannin was furious. Another attempt to transplant the genome of the first Hokage to another person almost failed again. Of the 10 children he used as test subjects, 9 had already died, and the last 10th was very bad and most likely would not last long either. After getting angry and destroying his laboratory a little, Orochimaru calmed down and had to admit that a complete transplant of Kakagenkia is apparently impossible due to the fact that the body rejects foreign genes. A partial transplant, like one of Shimura Danzo's hands capable of using a tree element or a cursed seal based on the genes of a guy named Judo, found by him for 5 years backward, is extremely unstable and therefore dangerous. This upset Sannin very much, as it disrupted his plans related to the technique of immortality. After all, this technique required relocation to a new body, but each body has its own talents and, therefore, Orochimaru will not be able to use all his abilities, because there are very few universal people, equally capable of all branches of shinobi skills, like him. Sannin hoped to get around this problem by transplanting other people's genomes into his new bodies, but apparently he will have to look for another way to solve this problem. Here the reflections of the great Sannin were abruptly interrupted by the triggering of the signal seal standing on the way to his laboratory. At least 3 Chunin-rank shinobi were moving towards him, and this promised considerable problems even for Orochimaru. Sannin was torn between the need to get out and the fear of losing everything he had been working on for years. Fear for research won out and Orochimaru began frantically collecting everything he needed in his laboratory: journals with records, rare ingredients and DNA samples, scrolls with sealed equipment and literature, and much more. Sannin was just hiding the last rare sample in his spatial pocket when 2 Umbu burst into the laboratory, one in a ferret mask, and the second in a raccoon mask, and with them none other than the 3rd Hokage himself. And what did Sarutobi Hiruzen see with his own eyes? His best student, dressed in a medical gown, stained with blood and some kind of mucus, standing in the middle of the laboratory. But what a laboratory! There were operating tables with human and animal corpses cut up on them all over the room, racks stacked along one wall with flasks with alcohol-soaked tissue samples, and at least a dozen coffins along the other wall, as well as various equipment, both medical and more like executioner's tools. Orochimaru saw who in front of him gave out his trademark grin, slowly took off his robe, under which there was a classic form of Chunin Konoha, throwing it right on the floor, and said, "I've finally been caught." "How sad, what does all this mean, Orochimaru?" a third exclaimed with an expression of utter amazement on his face. "I set a lot of traps, but it seems they were bypassed. I was surprised, but now I see why. It was you, Sarutobi-sensei, in the village. Recently, people have begun to disappear, genins, chunins, even members of the ANBU. Besides, we have official information that you've been acting strangely lately." The ANBU, wearing a ferret mask, issued an operational report. "Orochimaru-sama, why would a great ninja like you do this?" the second ANBU exclaimed. "Should I kill you too?" Grinning and raising an eyebrow questioningly, Orochimaru clarified. "So you're behind all this, Orochimaru? Tell me. What are you doing here?" The third began the interrogation with an extremely serious expression on his face. "Now that you've caught me red-handed, I guess lying won't help. I'm developing a new technique, Orochi." "Then why did you kill your ninja buddies from the village?" the first ANBU chimed in again. "Forbidden technique, right? What do you want to achieve?" "Everything, everything. I want to learn all the techniques and understand the truth of this world." The one who mixed blue and yellow for the first time called the resulting color green. "I want to do something similar to this. If you imagine the chakra as blue, hand seals as yellow, and technique as green. Like so many different colors, there are tens of thousands of techniques in this world. But it takes a lot of time to learn all the existing techniques and understand the truth. I have been studying techniques all my adult life, and I have already learned several hundred techniques, but having achieved so much, I realized that the longevity of the body is too small. It is very short-lived. Even if I were a Hokage, everything would come to an end after my death, and I would not have time to achieve my goal." A full-fledged smile wandered over Sannin's face, replacing his eternal grin. Orochimaru was so carried away by his monologue that he even stopped licking his lips. "Orochimaru, this technique that you studied here, yes, you probably think right. Furo Fushur no Jutsu is a technique of eternal youth and immortality. This technique of immortality was created to bind the soul to this world forever. In other words, it is a reincarnation technique by which I acquire a new body. I transfer my mind into my body and master it. After finishing his monologue, Orochimaru just looked into his teacher's face. No one was in a hurry to continue the dialogue, and therefore Sannin simply asked the question, "What do you intend to do next, and sensei?" "Maybe, kill me?" "Summoning technique, Monkey King Enma," shouted a third while performing the technique. "But can you do it?" "Sarutobi, sensei." Sannin's face was distorted by madness, and without hesitating for a second more, he began to fold the seals of the technique at breakneck speed. The element of wind, elastic splash. A dense wave of wind, which dispersed from Orochimaru, broke most of the flasks, and most importantly, broke a few lamps, and the laboratory plunged into semi-darkness. Taken aback, not expecting such a sharp attack and therefore confused by the ANBU, they were immediately cut by the wind blade technique, the seals for which Sannin managed to form. Enma, in turn, tried to attack the traitor, but was immediately bound hand and foot by snakes that appeared from Orochimaru's sleeves. Without hesitating for a second, Sannin rushed to the exit, not paying any attention to the third one frozen in place and Enma lying on the floor. "Kill him, Sarutobi. Kill now while you have the opportunity," Enma shouted, but Sarutobi Hiruzen did not even move. "Sarutobi, you..." Orochimaru did not hear any further words from Enma, as he was running away down the corridor away from the laboratory, trying to get out of the sewer as quickly as possible. Having reached the first intersection, Sannin stopped and, using the technique of the earth, brought down the corridor leading to the laboratory, thereby immuring his teacher in it. After getting out of the sewer, Orochimaru decided to quickly shed out of the village. There was no time to lose, but it was also not the case to run away unprepared. He decided and moved home with the help of spatial technology. Once at home, he quickly gathered everything he needed, rejoicing that he had already prepared everything in case of escape for a long time, wrote a note for Anko, in which he outlined the summary of what had happened, and also attributed that he was leaving the house and all its contents to her and, leaving a note on the table at the entrance, Anko had the keys. Without pausing for another moment, he ran to the exit of the village. And it must happen that the same Zintiuriki kid runs into him again, this time, from several drunken chunins. A brilliant idea immediately comes to Sannin's head, how to shit on Konoha and at the same time help this kid. Orochimaru didn't have time for the ceremony, so he just knocked out the baby with a blow to the head, threw it on his shoulder and thoroughly scared young alcoholic chunins with a wave of ki, rushed to the wall surrounding the village. He was going to simply climb over the wall and on the most accessible, taking into account the cargo in the form of baby Naruto, he was asked to go to the land of rice fields, where there was one of the shelters prepared in advance, but he was not allowed to do this. Fortune changed him at the moment when he was already climbing the wall. It had to happen that it was in this place that a patrol consisting of 3 chunins was now pacing the wall. Chunins noticing a man in the guise of Orochimaru, PA. How could they have known that this was him, carrying an unconscious Jinchuriki on his shoulder, mistook him for an enemy agent on a mission to steal Konoha's weapons? Naturally, their reaction was extremely predictable. They pulled out their weapons and attacked Sannin, who had already climbed the crest of the wall. They were afraid to use throwing weapons, because they could get into Jinchuriki, so they attacked taijutsu. 2 of the 3 chunins took out short wakizashi that hung in a sheath behind their backs, and the third simply pulled 2 kunai out of his pouch. Orochimaru, annoyed at the delay, began to evade attacks, because one of his hands was busy and, therefore, he could not fold the seals for the technique. Dodging the first attacks, he found himself in the middle of the wall surrounded on 3 sides. The enemies relaxed a little, thinking that they had cornered the kidnapper. Sannin, on the contrary, only rejoiced at their stupidity, and literally in a couple of seconds all 3 chunins were tightly wrapped with thick white snakes that appeared from the kidnapper's clothes. After waiting for a few seconds, Orochimaru finally heard the bone crunch he expected, and after making sure that all 3 chunins at least lost consciousness, and possibly died, jumped off the wall onto a branch of the nearest tree and ran away from Konoha, the technique that creates a sphere of tightly compressed air diverging at high speed from the user is extremely effective for protection from throwing weapons, as well as repelling other not very heavy objects. Orochimaru had been jumping from one branch to another for about half an hour at top speed and decided that he needed to catch his breath, otherwise he wouldn't be out of breath for long. Having made this decision, Sannin jumped down from the tree to the ground, dropped his burden, Naruto, next to him. Orochimaru thought that running away himself and taking Jinchuriki with him was a brilliant idea. It was very pleasant to imagine how the elders of the village, together with Shimura Danzo, would stand the third for the loss of Jinchuriki in the mist. Now, Nukenin of rank S, grinning at his thoughts, Sannin took out a syringe, injected Naruto with a lethal dose of sleeping pills. He is a Jinchuriki, their regeneration is much faster and, therefore, the drugs act worse on them, so that he slept the whole way. And then he himself will not be able to run anyway, and he will have to drag it anyway, but when he sleeps, at least he will not distract with questions. Thought Orochimaru, and again shouldering the baby on his shoulder, he ran on the way to the shelter. Orochimaru reflected on what had happened. POV Orochimaru, after what happened 4 years ago, Jiraiya and Tsunade wanted to take Minato and Kushina's newborn son, even though he is a Jinchuriki, and raise him. However, in response to their request, the elders not only did not allow them to fulfill their duties as godparents, but also forbade them to appear in Konoha for 12 years. Considering also today's incident, the village lost 3 of its strongest shinobi and its only Jinchuriki, whereas there are 2 of them in Stone and Cloud. Yes, Konoha's situation is now well, thank Kami-sama. So the next question is, what am I going to do next? Of course, I have several shelters and a certain amount of money, but there are no test subjects, no source of income, no loyal people. But if they could not send a chase after me, then they will definitely send for Naruto. Find Jiraiya and push the kid to him. But after all, this fool will not be able to raise a boy normally. He will raise either a holy fool who dreams of bringing peace to the whole world, or just another pervert, albeit quite strong. No, it's decided, I'll keep the guy and raise him myself, and I won't be a great snake Sannin if the guy doesn't grow up to be one of the strongest shinobi. So once I decided with the guy, then the plan is something like this. The guy will not be able to train normally in the next 3 years anyway, so during this time you need to pick up people who will be loyal only to me, provide yourself with an uninterrupted source of income and find yourself material for research/experimental subjects. The easiest way to achieve the last 2 goals is to spread your influence over a certain territory or even seize power in some small country, but for this you first need to fulfill point 1, okay, as a draft plan will do. And finally, the last thing, how much to tell the baby. Well, there's no way to decide in advance, you'll have to talk to him first, when he wakes up, see how adequate he is. The path of the great Sannin to the land of rice fields was about in such reflections. The end of Orochimaru's POV. Sannin's questions requiring reflection were over, but the path was still a long one, and most importantly terribly monotonous, all these branches endlessly flashing under his feet, and above his head the crowns of the trees of the land of fire, which so irritated him with their identity. Well, he did not like this method of transportation. How much better it is to walk slowly along the road, looking into all the settlements to find out the news and relax, and on the way carefully think over a new experiment or surgical intervention in the structure of the human body. However, now he did not have such an opportunity, so the snake tried to relax and detach himself from the world, going into the depths of his mind, but his body at the same time continued to mechanically jump from branch to branch at the same speed. About 8 hours later. The time was approaching midnight and Sannin Orochimaru finally reached his refuge. The first thing the snake was going to throw Naruto into his room to sleep. Why exactly in his own? Well, the other rooms in the shelter were completely empty, and Sannin himself was still not up to sleep. He had to sort out everything that he had managed to pick up from Konoha. However, Sannin's intentions were not destined to come true, since Jinchuriki's body had already overcome the sleeping pills and Naruto woke up, saw Sannin and rushed. "Your name is Orochimaru, right? Where am I? What am I doing here? And why are you helping me for the second time? After all the villagers hate me and call me a demon, and I don't even know why." The kid began to chatter without giving Sannin a word to insert. Orochimaru, Afajev from such verbal diarrhea, sighed heavily and began to answer, "Yes, my name is Orochimaru and I'm glad that you remembered my name the first time. To the second question, you are in the land of rice fields in one of my shelters. Where is the country of rice fields? And what is a shelter?" The kid interrupted him, jumping up on the bed, on which Konoha's main snake managed to throw him off. "Don't interrupt, otherwise I won't answer at all. So where was I? Why am I helping you? Let's just say I knew your father, and I don't like this attitude towards his son. What are you doing here? You see, I had to leave the village and I took you with me, but if you want, of course I can return you to the village. Well, as for why they call you a demon, it's a long story and I don't want to tell it now." While Sannin was saying this monologue, the restless kid had already finished jumping on the bed and was now enthusiastically exploring the semi-dark room of the shelter. "No, Orochimaru-sama, I don't want to go back to the village, no one is waiting for me there anyway. Did you really know my father and mother? Who is he? What was his name? Will you really tell me about him and why they call me a demon?" the kid asked, distracting himself from his occupation and looking curiously at Sannin. "Yes, I'll tell you about your parents and why you were called a demon and everything else, but only later. Right now I have other things to do, so go to bed and sleep." Orochimaru tried to scare a small blonde hurricane by making a scary face and releasing a little of his ki. "But I don't want to sleep. To be honest," the guy lowered his voice, "I want to eat, and hear a story about my parents." Naruto whined, not at all afraid of either a snake's grin or a slight thirst for murder. "Okay, you really slept all the way, and it wouldn't hurt for both of us to eat. Follow me," Orochimaru said, giving up and heading out of the room. Sannin brought the baby to the dining room, where he printed out a simple but hearty meal from the scrolls and they began to eat. After a late dinner, Orochimaru decided to combine the useful with the useful and went to the library to sort books and scrolls, and at the same time began his story. Sannin told Naruto that his parents were Namikaze Minato, the fourth great Hokage, nicknamed Yellow Lightning Konoha, and Uzumaki Kushina, nicknamed Bloody Habanero, told about what kind of people they were, their character, habits, in general, everything he knew, what techniques they used, and told about how what happened 4 years ago. Orochimaru tried to give the information gently, so as not to injure the guy, so that he did not start hating his parents, but on the contrary was proud of them. Surprisingly, while Orochimaru was leading his narration, Naruto sat surprisingly calmly. He did not climb under his arms and even almost did not steal books and scrolls for looking at pictures, and when the story came to the time of his parents' death, he generally quieted down after listening to the story. Little Naruto, furtively wiping away the flowing tears, asked only one question: "Why me? Why me? Why did my parents do this to me?" There was pain and resentment in the baby's eyes, and his voice trembled from suppressed sobs. "They believed in you, believed that you would cope, because you are their son. And you are the only one who could survive the imprisonment of such a powerful demon as Kyuubi, because his chakra is poisonous and only you, the one on whom this chakra influenced from the moment of conception, could survive after sealing. Before his death, your father asked that you be considered a hero defending the village from the Kyuubi, but ordinary people are stupid and cowardly, they do not understand, and even the elders forbade disclosing information about who your parents are, and even godparents were expelled from the village for 12 years. So don't be mad at your parents, they did everything they could. I'm not mad at them, it just hurts me. You said I have godparents. Who are they? Their names are Jiraiya and Tsunade. They are my former teammates, as well as I. The Sanins are students of the third Sannin are one of the legendary Trinity. I see. Great Orochimaru-sama, please take me as a student. I want to become as strong as you. Tears disappeared from the baby's eyes. Now there was a fire of determination burning there. First answer me, and why do you need my power? If I like your answer, then I will help you grow up the same as me or your father, the strongest shinobi of his generation. If not, then I will not train you at all. After your story, I had a goal. When I become strong, I will return to the village, kill all those who hated and despised me, and then I will take the post of Hokage and continue my father's work. I will change the village to my liking, and then I will make Konoha the strongest and most powerful hidden village in the world. The kid recited, inflating his chest, thereby trying to make an important appearance. Well, Naruto, I liked your answer. Your chosen goal is difficult and selfish, so I will take you as an apprentice, but with several conditions. You will follow all my orders related to training, regardless of whether you like them or not. And secondly, you won't interfere with my work. And finally, the third, you will have to become much calmer and more diligent, or you will never be able to become a strong shinobi. Do you understand me? Yes, sensei. When do we start training? The kid yelled, with a smile all over his face and burning eyes. Well, we will start practical classes in 3 years. What? What did I tell you about excessive indignation? Excuse me, sensei. Well, you are still too young to practice, so you will spend these 3 years studying theory, and there will be everything from chakra theory, physical laws and history to mathematics, philosophy, economics and ethics. By the way, do you even know how to read? No, sensei, I can't, Naruto said in a sad voice, lowering his head, because no one taught me before you. Okay, I don't have time for you, so I'm going to create my shadow clone now. They will help you in gaining knowledge. I will only check how well you have mastered the material. Having said this, Orochimaru created a shadow clone and told him to start studying, and he left to do the laboratory. Naruto has been living with Snake Sannin for 3 years. Orochimaru became everything for the baby, a mentor, a role model, a second father. For the first 6 months, it was very difficult and lonely for a very young, full of energy baby, because for such an active child to live in a huge dark shelter, only occasionally going out into the sun, was very difficult. But most of all, Naruto was depressed by the fact that he was all alone in it. After all, Orochimaru often left the shelter, and the only occupation of the baby, instead of playing with peers and various pranks, was studying. The study that so annoyed the blonde. And if such subjects as the theory of the chakra and history were given to him relatively easily, then it was very bad with the exact sciences, which is why the mentor forced him to study even more. However, after these first 6 months it became much easier. Sensei brought 2 guys 3 years older than Naruto from his travels. They were Judo and Kimamaru. Judo is a quiet, calm and extremely serious red-haired guy. Later, Naruto found out, although Judo looked about 7 years old, in fact, neither he nor even Orochimaru knew how old he really was. After all, when Sannin first met Judo, more than 5 years ago, he looked almost the same, and the redhead himself does not remember anything about his past. He went with Snake Sannin to help him get rid of the bouts of insanity that Judo himself could not control in any way. During the attacks, the red-haired man turns into a real monster with great strength and chakra. It was on the basis of this power that Orochimaru created his cursed seal. Kimamaru is a very calm and reserved guy with a thin build and average height. He has white, long hair with 2 pigtails. He also has an interesting tattoo on his forehead, the mark of his clan, 2 parallel red dots. He turned out to be the only survivor of his clan who died in a bloody massacre, which he himself unleashed. Snake Sannin saved him, and now Kimimaro was infinitely devoted to his savior, who gave him a new meaning of life. Kimimaro is able to grow bones at will and change their shape and hardness. At the same time, the user's bones are harder than steel, which is why physical attacks against them are useless. They were the first friends and rivals for Naruto, because he saw their strength and dreamed of catching up with them, and then surpassing them, which turned out to be the best incentive for him to study. Other people began to appear. There were two types of them. The first were shinobi who wanted to serve the great Orochimaru, who filled the rooms of the shelter. The latter were prisoners needed by Sannin as test subjects. They in turn occupied prison cells. Things also went well with his studies. Naruto understood the basic principles, and now, even if he spent a lot of time, he managed to learn everything so well that Sensei was no longer angry with him. Well, he is already used to the absence of the sun. After all, a person gets used to everything during these 3 years. The blonde has grown a lot, his hair has grown below his shoulders, the iris of his eyes, due to the lack of light, has become even brighter than before, and on his face it was less and less possible to see his wide happy smile, and more often, the same as Orochimaru's grin. The number of shinobi subordinates to Sannin over these 2.5 years has already exceeded 50, however, there were not so many truly talented among them. Judo, Guren and Kimimaro with their 4, consisting of Jirobu, Taiwi, Kadamaru and Sakan with his Siamese twin Yukon. And now he was walking along the central corridor of the shelter, every now and then, meeting shinobi with sound protectors, each of whom bowed to him, because everyone considered him the most beloved disciple of the great Orochimaru and were afraid accordingly. These pathetic, cowardly worms irritated Naruto terribly, but Sensei taught him that such cannon fodder as these cowards can also be useful. After all, it's not a pity to lose them. The blonde man did not agree with this, but he kept his opinion to himself. After all, these are not his people and not his village. But he decided for himself, when he gathers his own team, in order to achieve the goal, he will recruit only strong, proud and talented fighters there. Indulging in such thoughts, Naruto reached the end of the corridor and turned towards Sensei's laboratories. He began to shake with excitement, because today was an extremely important day, the day when he would decide whether he would start practical classes tomorrow or study theory for another 6 months. After all, it was today that the blonde had to take his main theoretical exam for all the material passed in 3 years to Orochimaru sensei. The kid was so immersed in anxious thoughts about the importance of this exam that he absolutely did not notice people in white coats sneaking past him and even walked past the right door, but he caught himself in time and turned 180 degrees to go to the right door, knocked and asked Orochimaru sensei, "Is Naruto? Can I come in?" "Come in, but you'll have to wait until I'm done." The voice of the snake Sannin was heard from behind the door. Naruto opened the door and went inside the room. It was his sensei's favorite laboratory, and it was in it that he conducted most of the experiments. It looked, like the vast majority of the rooms of this shelter, extremely gloomy, a fairly large hall filled with various medical and not-so-medical equipment, samples floating in disgusting-looking solutions filling various flasks of all shapes and sizes, coffins both empty and sealed, containing interesting genetic material. Well, the most noticeable here was a huge operating table in the center, above which hung a single lamp. There were no other light sources in the room. It was over this table that Orochimaru was now leaning, dressed in another terribly dirty, once white, robe. On the table itself lay a man from head to toe studded with various tubes and wires, which in turn went to various devices of names that Naruto did not know and did not want to know. But finally, one of the devices beeped shrilly, causing Sannin to start up, and after him, all the other equipment also blinked, made a noise, and after a dozen seconds just passed out. Orochimaru reacted to this with the usual outburst of rage for the blonde, and this one is also dead. It starts to seem to me that it's fucking impossible. Sannin swore, after which he grabbed the corpse by the throat, with his long tongue, threw it at the door, thereby opening it, and shouted through the already slammed door, "Someone take this garbage away from my laboratory." That Orochimaru-sensei can't develop ordinary people into such as you shinobi generalists, thereby making them an ideal vessel. The blonde man tried to feign interest. Yes, not a single test subject has survived yet, and the transplantation of Kakajenkov is also impossible. I checked, replied Sannin in a tired voice. Don't worry so much, sensei, you have another 10 years before you start to weaken. There's plenty of time to come up with something. Naruto tried to cheer up his mentor. What makes you think I'm worried? And in general, stop pretending that you are interested in my experiments. I know perfectly well how indifferent they are to you, so come on, tell me why you came, the snake Sannin said in an absolutely normal voice, with a slight note of indignation, pulling the usual grin on his face and completely unconsciously licking his thin purple lips. Well, to put it quite bluntly, today I have a kind of final theoretical exam, which you yourself assigned to me, sensei. Apparently I made a mistake with the 10-year forecast. Sclerosis has already begun to overcome you. The blonde recited, copying Orochimaru's lecturing tone, with which he lectured him and grinning at the same time so that it was clear that a little more and the grin would turn into laughter. It's not sclerosis, it's 30 hours without sleep spent in the laboratory. The mentor answered him, giving him a preventive punch on the blonde crown. Okay, so the exam is an exam, however, this is not the right place for a long conversation, so first we will change the situation. Let's go to my office. Without saying anything else, Orochimaru left the laboratory, and his young student had no choice but to follow him. Snake Sannin's office was not far from the laboratory, so they were there in just a couple of minutes. Naruto entered the office, first of all looked around, because he had never been here before. The entrance to this room was closed to everyone except its owner. And that's what he saw. Firstly, compared to the laboratory, it was light here, lamps hung along the walls, and there was a beautiful candlestick for 7 candles on Sannin's desk. Secondly, instead of coffins and samples that were depressing, there were cabinets with the rarest, those that could not be entrusted to the library, books on medicine, anatomy and simply containing the results of experiments, as well as scrolls with techniques. Many of these treatises were written personally by Orochimaru. In the middle of the office there was a huge chair more like a throne, turned towards the door, and behind it a 3-meter desk with a bunch of drawers and littered with scribbled magazines, scrolls, and just scraps of paper. What is especially interesting is that behind the table there was not another pompous throne, but the most ordinary wooden chair without armrests and with a straight back. Orochimaru walked to the middle of the room, sat down comfortably in his huge chair and threw the student take a chair and sit next to it. The blonde, silently, went to the table, took a chair and, moving it closer to the sensei's throne, sat down. Snake Sannin, seeing that his disciple was ready, continued. So, the final theoretical exam. You will take it in the subject, theory of the chakra, and we will probably start with your story about what the chakra is and what it is for. Chakra is the energy that shinobi focuses to apply his techniques. It is fundamentally present in every living organism, but only after passing special training can you get access to it. The chakra is the basis of almost all techniques. In order to use techniques, a shinobi must be able to form a chakra, change the property of the chakra and release it. Only for taijutsu, there is usually no need to release the chakra, except for some techniques for which taijutsu users must master the control of the chakra in their body, the blonde man said as if by textbook. So, not bad. Now tell me about the simplest ways to use the chakra, asked the next question Sannin, imperceptibly pumping his chakra tension and temperature in the room. The chakra can be used to climb a tree or walk on walls and water. In addition, some shinobi are able to impart healing properties to their chakra. There is also another way to use the chakra. Shinobi impregnates the metal conducting the chakra with his energy, most often a sword or kunai. This slightly increases the sharpness and length of the blade. Naruto's face gave out an extreme degree of concentration, but he continued to answer in as much detail as possible, because his future for the next 6 months depended on it. Good. Now about the formation of the chakra. Orochimaru continued the interrogation in a harsh voice, further increasing the pressure on the surrounding space. The chakra consists of 2 different types of forces, physical and spiritual. The bodily energy is in the human body from the very beginning. It is evenly distributed throughout all cells in the body. The reserve of bodily strength can be increased by physical development of the body. Spiritual energy can only be increased by gaining experience over time. To receive the chakra, Shinobi combines his bodily and spiritual forces inside himself and mixes them, forming a small whirlpool. This is the center of the chakra. And already from it the chakra flows throughout the body through the chakra circulation system. Therefore, it is extremely important to know your limit, because the more chakras you spend from your reserves, the more tired you get, and the slower a new chakra is formed. And if you exceed the limit, then at best you will be in a coma, and at worst, death. The blonde, who had already fallen into a trance, answered. So far, which is just fine, I didn't expect Naruto from you. Ways to control the chakra. The blonde's mentor continued to ask questions, but it was clear from his face that he was pleased. The simplest way to control the chakra is to form hand seals in a certain sequence, together with some other action. For example, for a fireball, you need to inhale air and saturate it with chakra, at the same time folding the seals, and then exhale sharply. More difficult is the control of the chakra in your body. This allows Shinobi to be faster, stronger, walk on vertical surfaces and water. And finally, the most difficult thing is to control the shape and nature of the chakra. My father's technique, which you told me about, Rasengan, is a rank A technique, but it's just a chakra, the shape of which is controlled by Shinobi. It's the same with controlling nature. After long training sessions, you can change the nature of your chakra by changing its properties. However, Shinobi can master control only over the element of the chakra to which he is predisposed. Control over the shape and or nature is available only to the most experienced and talented Shinobi. From the tension and stuffiness of this room, which is not equipped with any ventilation, a crease has already appeared on the baby's forehead, and beads of sweat flowed down his face, but he continued to confidently answer questions. Well, if you also tell me about the affinity for the nature of the chakra, then right now I will help you determine which elements you have a predisposition to. Orochimaru, proud of his student, said in a solemn voice. Every shinobi has an affinity with one or another element. It is determined at birth by your genes, since it is most often inherited. You can determine your element with the help of a special paper that reacts to the chakra, when water gets wet, when fire burns, when ground crumbles, when lightning crumples, and when wind paper breaks into 2 parts. Each element is superior to the other, but at the same time inferior to the other element. If the same element competes, there are 2 options. If the amount of chakra invested in the techniques is approximately equal, then they neutralize each other. However, if one of the techniques uses more chakra, it is not only stronger, but also absorbs the other technique and causes more damage to the opponent than usual. The ring of elements is as follows: fire is stronger than wind, but weaker than water; wind is stronger than lightning, but weaker than fire; lightning is stronger than earth, but weaker than wind; earth is stronger than water, but weaker than lightning; and finally, water is stronger than fire, but weaker than earth. There are also their compounds such as ice, water and wind, or the tree of the first hokage, earth and water, recited the blonde, whose nerves apparently finally calmed down after the mentor's praise. As the crease on his forehead smoothed out and the tension left his body, he was already sitting more relaxed. Perfect. I didn't forget or miss anything. Oh, I should have asked in mathematics, said Sannin, trying to seem upset. Not in math. Naruto shouted in panic, instantly finally falling out of his trance. Ha! I'm kidding. Okay, now sit and wait in silence until I find the chakra protective paper. Remember for now what properties, which element has, and everything you know about special types of chakras. Orochimaru gave valuable instructions, getting up from his chair and heading to his desk. After about 2 minutes, Sannin returned with a small box filled to overflowing with small square sheets. Do you know what you need to do? Yes, sensei, I know. Well, then take the first sheet and get started. Naruto took the first piece of paper and held it between the index and middle fingers of both hands. In less than a second, the leaf was cut in half. Your main element is the wind, and extremely pronounced. What is its special property? Orochimaru did not miss the opportunity to continue the exam. Special wind quality is the possession of extremely sharp cutting quality. A weapon impregnated with wind chakra cuts stone like butter. That's right, take the next sheet. The blonde held the second sheet between his middle and ring fingers. It was crushed almost as quickly as the first one was cut. Your second element is lightning, also very powerful. This is undoubtedly impressive for a 7-year-old boy. You are all like your father, not only in appearance, but also in abilities. Only his main element was lightning, and the second wind. What is the special property of lightning? Suddenly asked Orochimaru sharply, who had just been speaking thoughtfully, indulging in memories. The special quality of lightning is paralysis. Many lightning techniques, as well as weapons charged with the lightning chakra, are able to paralyze the enemy's body when hit. That's right, take the third sheet. The blonde squeezed the third sheet between his ring and little fingers. It took about 10 seconds before the leaf got slightly wet. Your third element is water, but it is extremely weak, so you can forget about it and focus on wind and lightning. And now tell me about the special types of chakras and we will assume that you have passed the exam, the snake Sannin summed up. How did you pass? And the other items, the blonde man, who was preparing to be interrogated all day today, was surprised. Judging by your character, you are a pure shinobi fighter, neither a medic nor a tactician will come out of you, so we will assume that the other subjects were only for general education and raising your erudition. But don't forget them completely, someday this knowledge may be useful to you to save your life or reputation. I didn't understand anything, why did I teach them then? But since you sensei say that it was necessary, Naruto said thoughtfully, scratching his head, but discarded thoughts, postponing them for later, and began to answer the question. Special types of chakras are those that are not connected with the main 5 elements in any way. There are not so many of them. The Biju chakra is an extremely powerful yin-yang chakra, each tailed one has its own. For example, the 5-tailed one has possession of all 5 elements, and the 1-tailed one has sand control. The medical chakra is an ordinary chakra transformed into the chakra of life, capable of healing damage. Extremely high control skills are needed to carry out such a transformation, and the concentration of the chakra, the natural chakra, almost nothing is known about it. Except that the one who uses it almost never gets tired. The only known person who can use it is the great toad hermit Jiraiya. And finally, genomes, such as those of Kimamaru or Judo, they are exclusively individual, most often inherited, and affect mainly only the carrier's body by changing it in some way. Well, that's a great answer. You have passed the exam, and tomorrow you can start training. At first, you will be engaged in only 2 things, physical training and exercises that develop your skills in controlling and concentrating the chakra. Tomorrow morning I will send a shadow clone to you. He will explain and show you all the exercises you need, and will also make sure that you do not overdo it, otherwise I know your sometimes excessive zeal. You are free for today, you can go to rest. Sannin finished the conversation, driving Naruto out of his office. The next morning, when the shadow clone of Orochimaru came to his student's room, PA, in which there was only a bed, a table and a chair from the furniture, Naruto had already woken up and was waiting for the arrival of his mentor. The blonde was overwhelmed with a desire to start training as soon as possible, and he immediately began to question the clone. "Sensei, you said yesterday that for the first time I will only do physical training and chakra control. How long will these classes take?" "I will not be able to answer your question exactly, since it will primarily depend on how quickly you will progress in chakra management and the degree of development of your body and the chakra circulation system in it," the clone of Sannin answered the blonde, slightly upset that his student was able to get up himself at such an early hour, but he wanted to wake him up with some sneaky technique. "Then, Sensei, we should start training as soon as possible, otherwise I can't wait to move on to something more than simple exercises," Naruto exclaimed, impatiently jumping up from the chair he had been sitting on. "Calm down. First, I will explain to you the schedule according to which you will now live, and only then, we will move on to the classes themselves. And even from today you are switching to a new diet aimed at the most harmonious development of your body, so do not forget to look into my laboratory tonight for drugs and instructions for taking them. Do you understand everything?" Suspiciously frowning face, asked Orochimaru. "Yes, Sensei, I realize that I need to listen to the schedule, and then come to your laboratory in the evening, where you will tell me again in detail about some drugs," the kid answered resentfully. "I see you didn't understand about the diet and dietary supplements, but at least you remembered that you need to come to me in the evening for a second briefing." "It's still better than nothing," the Snake Sannin clone summed up. "So, your schedule: 1. Lifting. 2. Warm-up. 3. Breakfast. 4. An hour and a half of meditation. 5. Physical activity. 6. Lunch. 7. Another hour and a half of meditation. 8. Training again. 9. Dinner. 10. Again, an hour and a half of meditation. 11. Hang up. In total, for sleep, exactly 8 hours a day, 2 more hours for eating, the remaining 14 for the training itself. Of these 14 hours, 4.5 hours you will be engaged with the chakra. That is, first meditate in order to feel the chakra inside yourself, then simple exercises will go, such as accelerating the movement of the chakra through the body and holding a tree leaf on your forehead, and then incrementally until walking on water. Moreover, the last 2 stages, walking on vertical surfaces and water, you will already combine with physical exercises. The training will include only exercises for the development of strength, speed, and endurance. There will be no hand-to-hand combat classes yet, the shadow copy of Orochimaru slowly broadcast. "How will it not be?" Naruto interrupted him indignantly. "Don't interrupt me." Sannin shouted at him. "First you need to develop your body so that your body strength and spirit strength balance each other and allow you to stably form a chakra. Only after that you can start serious studies, if you, of course, want to become a mighty shinobi, and not a cripple capable of using only taijutsu." "Damn it, and when will I start to become strong?" the blonde asked plaintively. "Strength is not only speed and techniques, but also intelligence, experience and knowledge. Only harmonious all-round development will allow you to become truly strong, even if at first you will be inferior to highly specialized fighters," the mentor tried to console the kid. "I'll trust your experience, Sensei. Where do we start?" The kid decided to get down to business. "You have exactly an hour before breakfast, so now we will go to the training room number 3, from this day it is completely yours, where you will spend a warm-up consisting of running and gymnastics. Do you know where the 3rd training hall is?" "Yes, Sensei." "Then run march." Orochimaru barked at the blonde, giving the kid acceleration, so much so that he almost tore the door off its hinges. Laughing at such a sharp start, the clone of Sannin ran after his restless student. About 7 minutes later in training room number 3, well, at last you deigned to run. Said sarcastically, clearly mocking, decorated with his trademark grin shadow clone, already sprawled in a chair in the middle of the hall. The hall itself should be described separately, a round hall, in the center of which there was a chair in which Sannin was now sitting. Along the wall there was a treadmill 400 meters long, and between the chair and the track there were dozens of exercise machines of all shapes and sizes. There was everything from a simple horizontal bar, crossbars and gymnastic walls to an obstacle course, benches with a system of counterweights for pumping the press and butterflies with weights for arm and back training. I ran as fast as I could, the kid muttered, panting. Slowly, very slowly. I think then we'll start with running. Let's run 30 circles around the hall, although no, we'll do a warm-up first, repeat after me, and Orochimaru began to show the blonde the exercises that he tried to repeat, but where does he get to the snake flexibility of the mentor? When they finished their warm-up 20 minutes later, Sannin said, yeah, it's pretty bad, you'll have to try. Well, you still have 40 minutes before breakfast, so let's go, run march. Naruto didn't come for breakfast, but crawled in. There was absolutely no strength. After breakfast, following the instructions of the clone, the blonde came to a small room next to the training hall number 3 and sat down in the lotus position and began to meditate, trying to feel the energy inside himself. An hour and a half later it became clear that he was not one of those who succeed the first time. There were no results at all, he felt nothing. To which the clone of the snake Sannin said only one thing, I see that we are waiting for several months of extremely hard work. 6 months later. A little older Naruto, with even more grown-up hair, was sitting on the splits and doing muscle-stretching exercises, and this happened on the surface of a small but stormy river not far from the shelter. There was another shadow clone of his mentor sitting next to him on the shore, filling out some kind of journal with notes and sealed objects, who just at that moment said, well, my disciple, over these 6 months you have already achieved control over the chakra at the level of an average Chunin. This is just a wonderful result for a child of your age. So we're finally going to move on to the techniques. Naruto exclaimed, jumping to his feet. Listen to the rest first. I said that this is a good result for an ordinary person, but you are not just a person, you are Jinchuriki, and with your huge supply of chakra, such control is not enough. But walking on water is the last stage, isn't it? Usually yes, but for you I have come up with a new way, a way that will suit only you. It is related to the principle of building your seal that restrains the kubi. In fact, the seal on your stomach accelerates the replenishment of your strength and chakra reserve by processing the kubi chakra into yours. But the seal itself is nothing but a double seal of 4 trigrams, and, consequently, its work can be disrupted and then your strength will not be replenished as quickly as it is now, and the flow of chakra in your body will become unstable. That's exactly what I'm going to do, disrupt your seal. But why? After all, then I will weaken? Naruto asked in surprise. Yes, you will weaken, but it will only benefit you, because without this nourishment your physical training will become more productive, and you still need to develop your body. But the most important thing is that if you learn to control that unstable storm of energy that is formed in your body, then you will strengthen your chakra circulation system, improve your control over the chakra, and at the same time you will learn what it feels like to really run out of steam. Therefore, now I will have to unwind, since I no longer have enough chakra to perform this technique, and you, in turn, will go to the original in the office, where he will put another one on top of your seal. Having finished this, the clone dissipated, piercing himself with a kunai. Damn it! Sensei, Satyuga, muttered the blonde man, heading to his mentor's office. Approaching the office, Naruto knocked and asked, Orochimaru-sensei, can I come in? Yes, come in. Naruto, having received permission, the blonde entered the office, which has not changed at all over the past 6 months. Now I will strengthen your seal, with another one, with the seal of 5 elements. It may hurt a little, Orochimaru said, distracting himself from the mountain of papers on his desktop, and formed the necessary seal, after which he lifted the black mesh t-shirt worn by the blonde today with his left hand, and created the technique with his right. 5 hieroglyphs appeared on the fingers of his right hand, enveloped in purple bunches of flame, which Naruto did not have time to consider, since immediately after the final formation of the signs, Sannin hit them into his seal, closing it. The blonde man screamed in pain. He had a feeling that he was pierced with a steel pin, but almost immediately the scream stopped, as the baby just fainted from the pain and the weakness that came over him. Seeing this, Orochimaru simply created a new shadow clone, which took the baby to his room. When Naruto woke up the next morning, his whole body ached. This surprised the baby very much, because this has never happened before. No matter how tired he was during the day, in the morning he was always cheerful, healthy and full of energy. And today there was no energy bursting with a key and forcing you to run somewhere, nor cheerfulness tossing you off the bed. On the contrary, today there was apathy, laziness, unwillingness to get out of a warm bed and pain that restrains movement. And while he was trying to persuade himself to get out of bed, Sensei entered his room for the first time in all these 6 months, finding his student in bed wrapped in a blanket, and not a yellow lump of cheerfulness jumping around the room. Finally, he thought and formed sorrows for the water wave element technique, putting very little chakra into it. However, it was enough to create a wave about half a meter high, which overturned the bed with the blonde, completely wetting him and turning his clothes and bedding into a pile of wet rags. "Good morning, my student." He greeted Naruto. "How do you like a morning invigorating shower?" "What's wrong with me, sensei? I've never felt so bad in my life. And why such a wake-up call?" Indignantly and at the same time confused, the young Namikaze asked his happily grinning mentor. "At the expense of why you feel so bad, it's all because of the lack of influence of the fox on your body and the instability of your own chakra. And such a wake-up call for the fact that you get out of the training schedule. So I quickly jumped up from the floor, got dressed and went to training." "Feel like a simple man," gloated Orochimaru, grinning happily. "Is it really so bad for all people in the morning?" the blonde man asked with horror. "No, only for those who overexerted themselves on the previous day. But you will be like this every morning if you don't learn to control that storm of energy that your chakra hearth looks like now," Snake Sannin encouraged the baby. "Then we need to go study," Naruto muttered in an unhappy voice and wandered around the room collecting his clothes. An hour and a half later, after a warm-up and breakfast. "Well? Has it become easier?" the shadow clone asked his disciple. "Yes, sensei, a little. But it's still much worse than usual," the sufferer answered him, walking into the meditation room. "Well, it's okay, if you can now make the chakra circulate properly through the body, then it will become much easier for you," Sannin delighted him. Having come to the hall and started meditation, Naruto was simply stunned by what was happening in his chakra circulation system. The chakra center was just bubbling, the chakra moved through the channels absolutely chaotically, causing pain to the whole body. He tried to normalize this process by willpower directing the chakra in the right direction, but not only did nothing work out, but on the contrary, 2 streams collided, causing him such pain that his concentration collapsed. "Sensei, what's going on? Yesterday I could make the chakra move with a light willpower, as I needed it, and now I can't even make it move in the right direction." I decided to ask for help from the mentor of the blonde. "Well, what did you want?" "Until you put the chakra hearth in order, you won't be able to do anything at all." Happily grinning, Sannin told him, "So go ahead, my student." Naruto realized that nothing more useful would be said to him, tried to regain concentration and proceed, only this time slowly and carefully, to pacify the ugliness that was happening in his chakra hearth. It took Naruto another 6 months to establish control over his frenzied chakra and develop his body. And here he is again performing various exercises on the surface of the same river, only slightly frozen, and suddenly he hears a clone of Sensei shouting, addressing him, "Well, my student, I can congratulate you, you have completed this stage of training, and from tomorrow, instead of classes on chakra control, I will start teaching you techniques. And now come to me, I will remove from you the seal of the 5 elements, which limits you and your strength so much. Hooray, I'm finally going to start learning techniques." The blond man yelled joyfully and, forgetting about all his exercises, rushed ashore to the mentor. Today it was quite cold outside, the middle of winter after all, so the young Namikaze had to take off his insulated, dark gray jacket with a snake pattern, along with a black jacket decorated with red fire, on the run. Sannin's clone was already waiting for him, and as soon as the kid ran up, he immediately hit him with his fingers, with green hieroglyphs burning on them, this time, removing the technique. Naruto immediately felt a powerful surge of strength filling his body with vigor and energy, which caused an involuntary exclamation of pleasure to escape from his throat. "Okay, go to rest for today. Tomorrow morning we will start classes with the transformation technique, and be sure to refresh your theoretical knowledge about this." Without finishing, the clone dissipated, having exhausted all the chakra invested in it. "Yes, Sensei, I will definitely repeat it." However, the blonde's exclamation, with which he wanted to interrupt the teacher, thereby angering him, was drowned in a cloud of smoke left over from the dispersed clone. Naruto sighed bitterly, thinking that it was still so long until tomorrow, and slowly wandered into the shelter to repeat the theory and sleep. Printing of the 5 elements is a rank A technique. This seal is able to strengthen any other restraining seal, only an odd one. In the case of an even one, it will disrupt the flow of the chakra, as well as seal part of the power or certain abilities of the victim. The next morning, Orochimaru decided to devote this day to teaching his student not by shadow cloning, but to personally do it, because the first day of techniques classes is a very important event for such a purposeful kid like Naruto. After looking at his watch and making sure that there were still 15 minutes until the moment of the blonde's rise, Sannin slowly left his office and went to wake up his student. However, when he came to his room, he found an empty room with a made-up bed and the absence of young Namikaze in it, as well as his belongings. Considering all these factors, Sannin came to the conclusion that his student can only be in one place, his favorite training hall number 3. Arriving at the training hall, Orochimaru noted with satisfaction that Naruto had regained his bursting energy, and with it his restlessness. The serpent decided not to reveal himself in any way and, having formed seals for the chameleon technique, he began to follow his student, who was just at that moment hanging in the air, holding the bars with his hands, and pumping the press. For about an hour, Orochimaru just watched how well the blonde was doing the exercises, and when he was about to go to breakfast, only then did Sannin discover himself, dispelling the technique and knocking on the door jamb. "Sensei, you're already here. And I've already finished the warm-up," Naruto told his mentor, beaming with joy. "I know, Naruto, I've been watching you for about an hour and I've seen everything. I see your energy, and along with it, your cheerfulness has returned to you. It's good that these 6 months, while your strength was limited, did not hurt you in any way. After all, no one had done this before, and I was afraid that various, let's say, unpleasant surprises, any side effects might occur. But everything went fine and it pleases. Let's go have breakfast, and then we'll start your first lesson in ninjutsu." Happy with the successful completion of the experiment on the use of the seal of the 5 elements, Orochimaru recited in a voice and turned around, opened the door and headed to the dining room, licking his lips rather in anticipation of breakfast, or from pleasure, or maybe just out of habit. His student's thoughts were busy with something else at that time, since sensei offered to have breakfast together, then it means that this is not a shadow clone? If that's the case, then when was the last time sensei personally engaged with me? Even as it is unusual. So, preoccupied with their thoughts, the teacher and his student came to the dining room, where they started breakfast. While they were eating, the others who were allowed to use this dining room, the Seven of Sound, led by Kimamaru, also pulled up to the dining room. This squad consisted of the most talented young shinobi available to Orochimaru, 11-year-old Jirobu, Taiyuya, Sakan/Yukon and Kadamaru, as well as 12-year-olds Jugo, Guren and Kimamaru. When they entered the dining room and noticed the great Orochimaru and his beloved disciple there, they respectfully bowed to Sannin and greeted Naruto before going to the table. Naturally, the blonde saw all his friends in the morning, immediately turned breakfast into a farce, greeting everyone in return and not forgetting to talk to everyone at once. Orochimaru, seeing such an outrage, from which he immediately had a headache, quickly finished and dragged the restless kid back to the training hall in order to conduct the first ninjutsu lesson for Naruto Namikaze. Arriving at the hall, Orochimaru finally decided to break the hanging silence. Let's start, perhaps, with a small portion of theory. Today you will learn one of the simplest, but at the same time quite useful, techniques, the technique of transformation. Tell me, what is the essence of the technique, transformation? The technique of rank E allows you to turn yourself into an object. It is dispelled when any damage is received. Requires only the seal of a rat, the blonde man replied clearly. That's right. However, before we move on to practice, I would like to discuss one more issue. As far as you know, usually young shinobi first begin to learn taijutsu and only then ninjutsu. However, you will not study taijutsu yet, but will continue to develop your body with ordinary exercises. But why sensei? The kid asked with bewilderment. Because I can only teach you my taijutsu style really well, and this requires body changes related to the snake summoning contract. That is, you will not be able to study it until you sign a contract with snakes, and for this you first need to master simpler techniques, Orochimaru explained in detail. I understand sensei, but after all, ordinary exercises practically do not give results, and you forbid increasing the load with the help of weights or by increasing loads during strength exercises. Will my development stop? The blonde, who is beginning to delve into it, asked a more specific question. I also thought about it and found a solution. Since the snake style is based on speed and flexibility, not strength, then weights and strength exercises are not our method, so we will increase the load naturally. From this day on, you will be engaged in full uniform, that is, with pouches stuffed with equipment, in light bracers and greaves reinforced with steel and in a standard Konoha shinobi vest. Well, with your returned stamina, can you double the intensity of classes? Sannin explained his point of view. As you say, sensei. Then I need to start practical training in ninjutsu as soon as possible. Saying these words, Naruto folded the seal of the rat and, concentrating, shouted, transformation. Orochimaru was sure that with this first attempt to apply the technique, his student would not get anything but cotton and a cloud of smoke. His student never did anything right at all on the first attempt, but after spending some time on achieving the goal, he began to do it perfectly. He even began to think that this was also a kind of genius. But now the smoke began to dissipate and this appeared before Sannin. Naruto tried to turn into his teacher, but instead he got something extremely thick and effeminate. It was possible to recognize this snake only by a long tongue and purple circles around his eyes. Orochimaru was just speechless for a few seconds, and then he gave out in a nasty, sweetly calm voice, "Did you try to turn into me?" "Yes, sensei." "What doesn't look like?" "Look at me carefully." "Have you looked?" Sannin asked, and after waiting for a nod from the student, he continued, "Now look here." Orochimaru shouted without holding back, taking a mirror out of his pouch and turning it to Naruto. Damn, it really didn't work out very well, the kid stated the fact. That's an understatement. Remember when I showed you a picture of Jiraiya? Yes. So turn into him. There is nothing to disgrace my image, the blonde's mentor gave an extremely valuable instruction. For about an hour, Naruto practiced the transformation technique, making his mentor laugh, until he began to turn out more or less decently. Having secured the result with 24 more successful attempts, the blonde finished practicing the techniques and, having received a full set of equipment from sensei, began to perform the exercises. At an afternoon ninjutsu class, a young Namikaze started studying cloning techniques. But he had difficulties with her, and on this day he could not finish with her. He got a more or less decent result only on the second day, and really beautiful on the third. Then came the techniques of body replacement, shadow cloning, body flickering, paralysis, chameleon, and even the technique of hidden forest attack invented by Orochimaru himself. In the process of studying all these techniques, the blonde still managed to persuade the teacher to allow him to start classes with kunai and shuriken, as well as to use the chakra in motion. But since Sannin was not a supporter of the classical methods of using these techniques, Naruto paid almost no attention to them, and was, instead, forced to quickly master the shadow dance and chakra running. Consequently, techniques such as the shuriken and the shadow of the shuriken have become the norm for him. In addition, all unusual ways of using this equipment were also studied, such as, with a fishing line, paralyzing and explosive seals, for traps, with bells or bombs of all kinds, smoke, pepper, light, etc., for disorienting the enemy and others. All these classes took the blonde about 5 months, at the end of which an extremely important conversation between the student and the teacher took place. The further life of the student largely depended on the results of this conversation. Naruto walked down the corridor toward Sensei's office and thought about why the mentor had called him to him today, thereby canceling all the training sessions scheduled for the first half of the day. He had been living with Snake Sannin in his shelters for 4.5 years, and his appearance, and especially his style of clothing, had changed a lot during this time. His height had already reached 120 centimeters, and his blonde, unruly hair had grown so much that it covered his shoulder blades. Thanks to constant physical exertion aimed at developing flexibility and speed, in the last 1.5 years, his body looked dry and wiry. The place of the perky smile that used to constantly illuminate his face, already on a permanent basis, was taken by a grin copied from the mentor's face. The blonde man was dressed in black, trimmed with red fire at the bottom, loose trousers and a black jacket, which he never buttoned, decorated with the same fire on the cuffs as on the pants and 2 green snakes on the torso. On his feet, standard shinobi sandals. Under the clothes were hidden leather bracers and greaves, reinforced with metal strips sewn into them, made of chakra-productive steel. Approaching the office, Naruto did not even have time to knock, as the door opened, and Sensei came out. Seeing his student Orochimaru, who had looked a little worried before, immediately calmed down and threw the blonde, "Come in." Naruto followed the teacher into the office. "Sit down," Sannin added, waving his hand towards the chair already standing next to his throne. "What happened, Sensei? Why did you interrupt me from training?" Naruto asked, wanting to finish the conversation as soon as possible in order to return to training. "Those trainings that you are currently engaged in are practically not giving results. It's time for you to move on to the next stage, and now you have to decide which one. Will you continue to study standard techniques and master the classic Iron Fist style? Or do you decide to become like me, and in addition to the standard techniques, study the forbidden ones? Become like a snake and fight using snake style? Just keep in mind, if you decide to go my way now, there will be no turning back, you will sign a contract with snakes and become like them. And then many people will turn away from you, because your eyes with vertical pupils will inspire horror, and your long tongue and snake-like body will disgust. Or you can avoid it and learn only ordinary techniques and taijutsu, and sign a contract with someone else, for example, the same toads with whom Jiraiya and your father signed a contract. Decide, Orochimaru said extremely tensely, and through his mask of indifference, excitement and anxiety broke through. I have decided everything for myself for a long time, sensei. During these 4.5 years, neither my desires nor my goals have changed, so you might as well not start this empty conversation. I want to be like you, and difficulties don't scare me. Let them be afraid, because they are afraid, so they respect. Naruto answered his mentor firmly and confidently. I'm glad I didn't make a mistake in you, my student. If you are so confident in yourself, then I suggest you sign a contract right now, Sannin offered his student, on the one hand confident that he would refuse to sign it now, and on the other hoping for consent, because the child in whom he once saw a weapon for the destruction of Konoha and a body for himself, became for it something more. A beloved student who admires his mentor, pupil and heir of his methods and character. Summon the contract scroll, sensei, I will be happy to sign it and finally start training in taijutsu. The kid happily answered his teacher. You will start, if you survive after being bitten by Kurahebe, muttered Orochimaru and, forming seals, summoned the scroll of the contract and its keeper Amaru. Why did you call me, sir? The snake hissed. I need a contract scroll, my disciple wishes to sign it, the snake Sannin replied in a firm, commanding voice. Naruto had often heard this tone from sensei, but it was never directed at him. This tone of voice suppressed the will, forced those who are weak in spirit to obey. Is he worthy, sir? The snake hissed questioningly, shaking his head. Let him show his chakra, sir. Naruto, show this fool your chakra, asked Orochimaru. Naruto, without thinking twice, began to concentrate his chakra and ignite his anger. This is how Orochimaru taught him, saying that thinking in battle is the right way to death. You need to fight on instincts, rage and anger, and you need to think through a strategy before a fight. Therefore, he taught Naruto to get angry during chakra concentration or performing techniques. As a result, it became an unconditional reflex. It was this kind of combat logic that Sannin came up with for his student, whose chakra power grew in direct proportion to his rage. The blonde continued to concentrate more and more chakras until cracks ran across the floor. Then the snake hissed, Enough, sir, your chakra is very strong, sir, for such a small person, sir, sign, sir. Having finished his thought, the serpent began to unfold his rings and as a result it turned out that it was around the scroll that he was curling up. Having freed the scroll, the snake rolled it up to the blonde man's feet with its muzzle. Naruto knelt down, unfolded the scroll and read the last name inscribed in it, Mitarashi Anko. And who is this? The kid decided to clarify. Have I told you about her? This is my first student, but she turned out to be incompetent, and that's why I left her in Konoha. I don't need garbage, Orochimaru answered the question. The blonde only grunted in response and, without further delay, bit through his thumb on his right hand and began to write his name in blood on the scroll, Namikaze Naruto. As soon as he finished writing, the snake rolled up the scroll with one movement of its muzzle and, wrapping itself around it again, disappeared with a pop into the clouds of smoke. Congratulations Naruto, now you can summon snakes. Do you know how it's done? No, sensei. It wasn't in the books you made me study. Of course not, this is no longer a basic technique. If you don't know, then listen carefully. Summoning is a technique that allows you to summon a totemic animal, in our case, a snake. It can be either a small 20 cm snake, or a manda, the king of snakes. The summoned snake and the rank depend on the amount of chakra invested. A blood sacrifice is needed for the summoning ritual, but a few drops are enough for the hand with which he signed the contract. The rank of the technique from C to A, seals are boar, dog, bird, monkey and sheep. Did you manage to write everything down? Sannin clarified, seeing that the student did not rely on his memory, but instead took a scroll out of his pouch and wrote down the words of the mentor. Yes, sensei, the kid replied, putting the scroll back in his pouch. May I try it? Yes, but try to summon a certain snake. Its name is Kurahebe. You'll need his help if you want to start taijutsu classes. Naruto grinned happily, bit through his left finger this time, drew blood on his right palm, formed the necessary seals and hit the ground with his right hand, exclaiming at the same time, summoning technique, Kurahebe. However, instead of a large and proud snake, a small snake with a length of 30 centimeters appeared. Not enough chakra. Concentrate normally. Sannin shouted at the student. Naruto collected 5 times more chakra and repeated the procedure. This time, with a loud pop, a large cloud of smoke appeared, from which the contours of the snake began to emerge. When the smoke cleared, Naruto was able to see the one he had summoned. It was not a very large snake, about 3 meters in length, bright green colors. The snake moved its muzzle from side to side, looking around, and asked in a rather clear, PA for a snake, voice, "Why did you call me Orochimaru? I told you not to do that." "You're wrong, Kurahebe, I didn't summon you." "Then who?" "Certainly not the coward you called me for last time. I don't repeat my mistakes." "You were called by my new student, Namikaze Naruto. He just signed the contract today." "This kid?" "Don't make me laugh, Orochimaru, I called you. Sensei said I would need your help if I wanted to do snake taijutsu. Do you even know what you're asking, you insolent boy?" The snake hissed angrily. "Yes, I know. I ask you to help me become the same as my mentor, the great snake Sannin Orochimaru." The kid answered loudly and pathetically. "Aren't you a coward, kid? I will help you, but I tell you right away, you can die. I will bite you by infecting you with my poison. After that you will lose consciousness and spend about a week in this state. The chances of survival are 33%, if you are strong in spirit and body, that is, your chakra is powerful enough and there is a lot of it, then you will survive," the snake hissed, explaining to the blonde what awaits him. "Why would I lie in bed for a whole week? Your student doesn't know what politeness is, Orochimaru. You will spend a week unconscious, because your body will be rebuilt and will acquire snake-like capabilities and features, vertical pupils, an extremely long tongue, the ability to move like a snake, i.e. to stretch the body or its individual parts, to wrap around trees or other objects. It gives immunity to all organic poisons and gastric juice of snakes. And now if you are not afraid and have not changed your mind, then stand still and let yourself be bitten," the snake finished his speech. "I'm not afraid. I want this power, bite." Naruto made a decision and froze, not moving. The snake slowly crawled up close to him and abruptly rushed forward, digging into the baby's torso with all 4 fangs and spitting out poison. As soon as the snake released the body of the young Namikaze, it fell to the floor without showing signs of life. The snake looked at Sannin and hissed, "Don't forget Orochimaru, if he dies, the corpse is mine, so don't forget to summon me, he won't die." The mentor of the victim answered firmly, "He is a Jinchuriki Kubi, your poison is unable to kill him." Kurahebe hissed angrily, thought about revenge and disappeared with a pop, leaving only a cloud of white smoke. A week later. Naruto had been passed out all week. Orochimaru ordered his subordinates to move the blonde's bed to his office so that he could constantly monitor his student. On the 7th day of his coma, Naruto finally woke up and at first did not even understand where he was and what was wrong with him. Looking around, he realized that this was the mentor's office. But something else was bothering the blonde. There was some discomfort, and he did not understand what. Only after examining the office once again, he realized that only candles were burning in the office, and it was bad for him to see on the teacher's desk, and the field of vision seemed to have narrowed, but he immediately recognized the teacher's office. This greatly surprised him, and he tried to get up to sort out what was happening. Sitting at his desk, Orochimaru finally noticed that his student had woken up and hurried to him. Coming up, he immediately asked, "How are you feeling?" "Nothing seems to hurt, sensei, but there's something wrong with the senses. This is normal, because your body has changed. Now you see a little more narrowly, it's because of the vertical pupils. Your sense of smell has increased, and now you are able to feel warm-blooded, although not as well as a real snake. Also, your tongue has become much more sensitive. But the most important thing is that your body is now able to master the snake style, so rest today, get used to the new body, go eat, visit Kimimaro and others. We'll start training tomorrow." After finishing the explanations and making sure that everything is fine with the student, Sannin went back to his desk to finish the work, because a week of calm has come to an end. Meanwhile, not far from Konoha, Mitarashi Anko is a black-haired girl of 17 years old dressed in a raincoat, a mesh t-shirt and shorts, as well as a chunin of the village hidden in the foliage and a former student of the great Sannin Orochimaru, trained in the forest, not far from the village. Deciding that she had not trained in summoning for a long time, she performed the technique by putting chakras on an average 4-5 meter snake. However, when the smoke cleared, she saw someone she never wanted to see, Kurahebe, who immediately hissed, "Hello, coward, what are you doing here? I didn't call you," Anko said in a trembling voice. She was afraid of this snake, because he had once promised to kill her. "Don't worry, female, I won't kill you today, I just need to tell you something." "What did you want to tell me, Kurahebe-sama?" she said more calmly. "About a week ago, I was called by some little kid about 9 years old. He is a new student of Orochimaru and he treats him quite differently from you once. Apparently the guy is talented. But he and Orochimaru insulted me, depriving me even of hope for food. But why do you think I'm interested? You don't, but your Hokage does. This guy is Jinchuriki Kubi, you can look at his name in the contract scroll." Having finished, the snake disappeared with a pop in a puff of smoke. Anko realized what the snake was talking about, immediately forgot about the training and rushed to the village to the great Hokage. Arriving at the residence and obtaining permission to go to the Hokage at the security at the entrance to the building, she went upstairs to the office of the head of the village. After knocking, she entered and saw the great third Hokage sitting at his desk, as always littered with a pile of papers. The third raised his head from the documents and said, "And this is you, Anko. What happened?" "Great Hokage, I have just been informed of such information, and I told him everything I learned from Kurahebe." For several minutes, the Hokage pondered the information received, after which he clarified, "Did you look at the name?" "Yes, of course. After me, there is only one name in the contract, Namikaze Naruto." "What?" To say that the third was surprised is to say nothing. He was just in shock. The incident required urgent measures, so he decided to send the girl away. "Thank you for the information provided, you can be free." However, not a word about this to anyone. "Yes, Hokage-sama," Anko said and left the office. The third, in turn, began to think, what to do now. Having made a decision not to tell the advisors, and indeed not to tell anyone about it, he sat down to write letters to his other two students, Tsunade and Jiraiya. Naruto just needs to be taken away from Orochimaru and returned to Konoha before it's too late. Chameleon, camouflage, technique, the user adapts to the environment, merging with it, and becomes almost invisible to the enemy. Rank B, cloning. Rank E, creates illusory copies. Flickering is a technique by which a ninja can hide or appear with the help of his chakra. Often things around like leaves or sand are used to hide the appearance or disappearance. Grade D, paralysis, is a technique that can be used to paralyze an opponent. After the user folds the necessary seals, the victim temporarily becomes paralyzed. Created by Orochimaru, an analog of the seal of paralysis of rank 1. Grade D, hidden forest attack, ninjutsu, with which the user can merge with the surface of the tree. He can also move freely on it to avoid damage. Grade C, shadow cloning, is a technique that creates material copies that dissipate upon receiving any damage, but transfer their experience and fatigue to the original. Because they have half of the host's chakra, they can use techniques. Extremely energy-consuming equipment and therefore dangerous. Rank B. Shadow dance is a special movement that allows you to hide a shuriken, kunai, in the shadow of another flying shuriken, kunai, or yourself in the shadow of your opponent. Chakra running is a way of conscious control of the chakra. The body is filled with chakra to increase the speed of movement and the force of impact. The most skilled in controlling the chakra shinobi, doctors, do not pump up the whole body, but only the necessary muscles, which allows you to achieve a greater effect. It took Naruto about 2 months to study and work out all the racks, bundles and transitions of the snake style. Fortunately there were not so many of them. And right now he was in his training room number 3 and practicing everything he had learned. Orochimaru, seeing that his student is already performing all the elements without errors, asked his student, "You have already learned all the elements of the style, so answer me, don't you think there is something missing in them?" "Yes, sensei. Most of the techniques seem to imply that I have some kind of weapon in my hands, or several times longer arms or legs. You correctly noticed. Therefore, look carefully," and Sannin began to show all the same techniques, but unlike what the blonde demonstrated, it was that with some movements Orochimaru's arms and legs lengthened, and the tongue flew out of his mouth, as if capturing parts of the enemy's body. When performing the same, as it seemed to Naruto, awkward movements, snakes began to fly out of Sannin's sleeves and trousers, and at least 4 pieces. "Wow!" the blonde exclaimed admiringly, "Your movements are many times superior to mine. What I showed is complete squalor compared to your movements." "Yes, and how your limbs lengthen, and even these snakes. Can I do that too?" "Yes, you can. You have already worked out the movements themselves. The speed will come with time and experience, but we will start working out the rest now. To begin with, read this scroll, it will help you understand what the secret is," and Sannin threw his student a scroll, standard for shinobi size, purple, decorated with black pictograms and therefore resembled snake scales. Naruto immediately unfolded it, and that's what he saw there: techniques used in conjunction with the snake style. They require a contract with snakes, a body modified by snake venom and special summoning tattoos on the body of the user. They do not require the formation of seals. Snake flexibility is a technique of changing the body with the help of a special snake venom. It allows you to move like a snake, that is, to stretch the body or its individual parts, arms, legs, neck, tongue, to wrap around trees or other objects. Hidden snakes, rank C. A technique in which snakes appear from the user's body that bite and strangle the enemy. Most often, snakes appear from the sleeves or pants of clothing. The number depends on the nested chakra, but not less than 4x, but it is also possible, the transformation of the tongue into a snake, the appearance of snakes from the back, the attack radius and speed decreases, but the strength and size of snakes increases greatly. Piercing snake, rank C. A snake flies out of the user's mouth, and from its mouth, the blade of the Kusanagi sword or one of its copies, a line of hundreds of snakes, rank C. A technique when using which a huge number of snakes come out of the user's mouth. They form into one big wall to attack the enemy or protect the user. The blade of Kusunagi's sword or one of his spears can also appear from the mouth of each snake. Snake style, body replacement technique, rank B, improved version of body replacement. After receiving damage to the body, the user stretches his mouth and a new, restored body comes out. Thus, this technique resembles the process of shedding the skin of a snake. After leaving the old body, all the damage in the new one is eliminated, even the limbs grow back. Requires a lot of chakra. In addition to descriptions, the scroll also contains schematic drawings illustrating what was written. At the end of the scroll, indicating the authorship, was the signature of the great Orochimaru. Teacher, I have read the scroll and I have some questions. In the description of some techniques it is said that the blade of the Kusunagi sword may appear from the snake's mouth. What is this sword? And second, the requirements are listed at the beginning of the scroll. What kind of tattoos are we talking about? Everything is simple about the sword, here it is, Orochimaru replied, after which he opened his mouth, from which a snake appeared, in turn spitting out the Kusunagi sword. http://novichkov.ukoz.net/kusunagi.png. I also have 3 more swords close to this in properties, but others in shape. I'll give you one of them, but only after you finish training without weapons. As for tattoos, it's simple. Have you seen the tattoos on my hands? We'll do the same for you today. This is a whole complex of summoning tattoos, including both those that are needed for the techniques from this scroll, and others, the seal of the reverse summoning of objects and the seal of the summoning of the Rashomon gate. It's a little easier on the legs, since there are only seals for techniques. Sensei, you mentioned the properties of this sword, what exactly does it have? Kusunagi is a sword that can cut through any matter. I am able to move the blade in the air. I can also increase the length of the blade to wound the enemy at a great distance. In addition, I am able to turn a sword into a snake or swallow it in order to store it in this way. Copies have only the property of cutting any matter and very good chakra productivity. The blade cannot cut only a powerful concentrated chakra, for example, it will never cut the Biju chakra, but the chakra of a simple shinobi is easy. And you will give me such a sword? The blonde man asked enthusiastically. Yes, I will give you one of the copies, but only when you have mastered the snake style perfectly. So stop talking and let's go to my lab, we'll do tattoos for you. Having finished, Orochimaru turned to the door and left the hall. Naruto, who couldn't wait to get this power, rushed after the teacher. Soon they found themselves in the laboratory, where San-nin, without stopping, walked to the farthest wall, folded several seals and one of the shelves moved aside, revealing another door to the eyes of those present. This door, as it turned out, led to a small ritual hall. It was completely empty, except for a circle of symbols on the floor, exactly in the middle of the room. While the blonde was looking around, his mentor took out several scrolls, a brush and ink from his mouth. Then he told his disciple, throwing him one scroll, I hope you have a clean scroll with you. If not, then go and get it in the laboratory, and if there is, then take this scroll and according to the instructions written there, make the necessary for the ritual. In the meantime, I'll double-check all the calculations, because we need to take into account your huge supply of chakra. Yes, sensei, I have clean scrolls, I'll do it now. For some time, nothing was heard in the hall except the rustle of paper. Naruto drew the necessary symbols in an empty scroll and filled them with his chakra, while Orochimaru was overlaid with 4 scrolls at once and redid some tooth-crushing formulas, simultaneously recalculating the results. The restless blonde finished first, rechecked all the signs one more time, and, after making sure that he had done everything correctly, said, Sensei, I'm done. Well done, I'm also finishing. You undress for now and lie down in a circle," replied Sannin without even taking his eyes off another scroll and without stopping scribbling something in it. When he finished, he went to the ritual circle, where his disciple was already lying. Coming close, Orochimaru began to draw the necessary signs on the wrists and ankles of the blonde. When he finished, he said, "So, now start filling the drawings with your chakra. And don't move, otherwise if the drawings get smeared, the result will become unpredictable." Having finished, he took the scroll that his student was preparing and, leaving the circle, began to look at whether all the elements were correctly composed. Having made sure that everything was done correctly and having heard from Naruto about the end of the process of filling the signs with chakra, Sannin sat in the lotus position at the base of the circle, unfolded the ritual scroll on his lap and began to form the necessary seals at breakneck speed, simultaneously directing the chakra into the scroll. The drawings on the blonde's hands and feet began to smoke and seemed to be absorbed into his skin, and the drawings on the ritual scroll, on the contrary, began to disappear. A few minutes later it was over and Orochimaru, in a tired voice, said, "Well, that's it. Now you can go back to the training room and start practical classes." 3 months later, Orochimaru stood in the training hall number 3 and watched his favorite student. Naruto had already mastered all the techniques listed in that scroll and was now trying to repeat the shadow fight that his mentor had shown him 3 months ago. Seeing the undoubted success of his student, Sannin decided that it was time to move on to sparring, because only in a real fight you can get a really useful experience. About which he did not fail to inform his student Naruto. The blonde stopped the movements and turned to the mentor. "You have already studied all the techniques and movements, it's time to move on to the accumulation of combat experience. So create a shadow clone and send it for Kimimaro. He will be your first sparring partner." Soon the clone brought a surprised Kimimaro, who had previously been forbidden to come here. When he saw Sannin, he bowed and said, "Good afternoon, Orochimaru-sama. And you Kimimaro-kun, you're probably wondering why I called you? I called you in order for you to become Naruto's sparring partner. And don't feel sorry for him, show him all your strength. If he dies, then so be it. As the great Orochimaru commands," Kimimaro said, bowing. After that, the white-haired man went to the center of the hall and stood in front of Naruto. "Ready?" asked Sannin, and seeing the nods continued, "Then let's start." Naruto immediately jumped back and attacked with hidden snakes from his left sleeve, which Kimimaro, in turn, simply knocked aside with his bare hand. After that, he slowly grew a small bone blade from his left shoulder. The blonde, seeing the enemy's slowness, fell to the ground and attacked with a line of hundreds of snakes. Several hundred snakes coming out of the mouth of a young Namikaze turned out to be a surprise for the last of the Kagaya clan, to put it mildly. In order to protect himself from such an attack, without letting a single snake touch him and at the same time also fulfill the order of the great Orochimaru not to stand on ceremony with his disciple, Kimimaro simply moved to the second level of the cursed seal and in less than 3 seconds turned the hall into a forest of sharp bone stakes. Such a radical approach not only destroyed all the snakes, but Naruto also found himself in the air impaled on several stakes, which, however, did not cause him serious damage. So, a slight scratch on the thigh, a pierced palm and torn clothes. Jumping back to the floor, the blonde filled his body with chakra to increase his speed, summoned 5 shadow clones, which he sent to attack, and he disappeared into the shadows using the flicker technique. The clones attacked Kimimaro from all sides, but he simply scattered 2 by shooting with his phalanges of fingers, and simply dodged the attacks of the others, at the same time piercing them with bones grown from the body like spikes in all directions. However, the clones fulfilled their task. They distracted the enemy's attention and the original, taking advantage of this, attacked with the help of a piercing snake. But even the element of surprise did not help the blonde against such a huge difference in speed and strength. Kimimaro simply dodged the snake, simultaneously grabbing it with his hand and pulling on himself. Naruto did not have time to react and received a bone blade in the liver area. Kaguya already thought that the fight was over, but the opponent was able to surprise him again. Hands appeared from the mouth of the defeated, and after them the whole body of the young Namikaze, PA snake style, body replacement technique. But this was the last trump card in Naruto's sleeve and he could not help him in any way. After Kimimaro pierced him with his bones 3 more times, Orochimaru finally stopped the fight. Then he released Kaguya and turned to his student. "Not bad, very good Naruto, but as you could see, you are still very far from the level of Kimimaro. Do you have any questions?" "Yes, sensei. This fight showed me that I really lack speed and experience, and strength and flexibility are also far from perfect. I have only one question: what happened to Kimimaro during the fight? Why has his appearance changed so much, and the speed, strength and power of the chakra have grown so much?" It's simple, it's the result of using the cursed seal of the 2nd level. You can read more in this scroll, and through the disciple a scroll pulled out of his mouth, on which strange symbols were drawn. http://novichkov.ukoz.net/pechati.jpg. Naruto immediately unfolded it and went deep into reading. And that's what he read there: the cursed seal of Orochimaru. Rank A. An extremely dangerous technique that seals the DNA of judo into the human body, while the chance of survival is 10%. After activating the seal, the user's strength can go to 2 levels. At the 1st level, the seals cover the user's body, which causes his speed and strength to increase. At the 2nd level, the seal changes the owner's body, which is why its power increases tenfold. To move to the 2nd level, you need to die during a special ritual, see below. If you use the seal for too long, you fall under the control of the owner of the seal. Black Tetrahedral Fog Seal. Rank B. A special ritual in which users seal the owner of the cursed seal into a barrel in which he is in a state similar to death, to avoid death, the seal of the Dark Seal. This is done in order to transfer the cursed seal to the 2nd level, Dark Seal seals. Rank B. A technique that is applied immediately after the use of tetrahedral fog printing. For this technique, the user draws hieroglyphs with his blood on 4 sheets, and then attaches them to a ritual barrel, preventing the person sitting in it from dying. While the blonde was reading the scroll, Sannin was thinking that after such a demonstration of the printing capabilities, Naruto would definitely ask him to put one for him, and he would finally find out how compatible the seal was with the body of Jinchuriki, how much its functionality and other interesting little things would change. There was a satisfied grin on his face from the overflowing anticipation of a new experiment, and Orochimaru was 100% sure that his student would definitely not die from printing. Naruto meanwhile finished reading the scroll and interrupted his mentor's thoughts with these words: "Orochimaru-sensei, I ask you to put such a seal on me. The power it gives is simply enormous. The risk of death and the danger of becoming a slave does not frighten me. Well, since you want it so." And with these words, Sannin lengthened his neck and bit through his disciple's shoulder, leaving his seal there. He expected his student to scream and lose consciousness from the pain, but Naruto only hissed through his teeth, and he was in no hurry to fall unconscious. However, the seal needed time to adapt, which Orochimaru informed his student about before injecting him with a huge dose of sleeping pills. The next day, Sannin walked down the corridor to his student's room and thought about continuing the experiment, moving to the 2nd level of the seal and checking its compatibility with the Kyubi chakra. For the first point, the transition to the 2nd level, everything was already prepared. There was a ritual barrel in the training hall number 3 and all the right people, Sakon/Yukon, Kidamaru, Tayuya and Jirobu. But for the second part, checking for compatibility with the Kyubi chakra, it was still necessary to come up with something that would anger Naruto more than a normal combat trance. After all, now, even with a combat trance, too little Biju chakra enters the blonde's body, the seal is still too strong and therefore this is clearly not enough, a cover is needed. But how to achieve this? Allow him to fight the Seven of Sound? Precisely. We need to show him the difference between the seal of the second level and its true power. We need to put him against judo. Declare that this is a fight to the death and do not stop it until Naruto is covered with fox chakra. Indulging in such thoughts, Orochimaru finally reached his student's room. Going inside, he saw that his student had already left the sleeping pills and was now in the shower. Shouting to the blonde to hurry up, Orochimaru sat down on the bed, deciding to wait for the student personally. A couple of minutes later, Naruto got out of the shower, the cursed seal of heaven was visible on his shoulder, got dressed and they went to the training hall number 3. Upon arrival at the place, the blonde swallowed the right pill, was stuffed into a barrel and sealed. 8 hours later, Orochimaru was sitting in a chair not far from the barrel and was waiting for the release of his student. Finally, purple smoke poured out of the barrel, it broke, and when the smoke cleared, Sannin saw his disciple at the second level of the seal. Naruto's eyes and hair turned black, his skin turned gray, and 2 webbed wings like a bat's grew out of his back, a feature of the sky seal. However, almost immediately the changes came to naught, returning the young Namikaze to his usual appearance. Orochimaru turned to Naruto, "So you got a cursed seal of the second level, don't you want to try it out? Take revenge from Kimimaro? No, compare the power of your seal with the power of its true bearer, Judo." "I want to." "Then call him here." After a few minutes, which the blonde spent on warming up, the clone hied to the judo training hall. He immediately turned to Sannin with a bow, "Greetings, great Orochimaru. Why did you call me? You know it's dangerous for me to be away from Kimimaro. Do you think you can hurt me?" Snake asked maliciously. "You don't have Orochimaru-sama, but your student or the shelter itself, it's okay, we'll repair the shelter. I called you for sparring with Naruto, sparring in which you won't restrain your instincts, that's why I didn't call Kimimaro. My student needs to test the capabilities of his cursed seal, and who can test it better than its source? So unleash your rage, it will be a fight to the death. Either Naruto will defeat you, or he will die, there is no third option, I understand." Having said that, Judo walked to the center of the hall and stood in front of his opponent. Sannin gave the go-ahead and Naruto wasted no time attacking from afar with hidden snakes. Seeing the snakes flying at him, Judo began to be covered with a pigment grid of the first level of the seal and easily dodged the attack, after which he immediately turned his right hand into a kind of piston and attacked in response, simply shooting his fist not a few meters forward. The blonde, seeing his lack of advantage in attacks at a distance, accelerated sharply and shortened the distance, starting to attack in close combat. Unlike Kimimaro, Judo did not have any powerful taijutsu style, and therefore he was inferior to his opponent in skills, but he was several times superior in speed and strength, and even pumping his body with chakra could not help his opponent. Naruto spun with a bundle, attacked with his hands, feet and even with his tongue, but still could not hook his opponent, he was too fast, and even attacked in response, turning his hand into a huge double-edged axe. Realizing that he was just wasting his strength and giving the opponent time to adapt to his style, the blonde also activated his cursed seal and covered himself with a bunch of black symbols. Now the speed has equalized and the young Namikaze managed to hook his opponent several times. A few scratches finally tore off the roof of the judo and he moved to the second level of printing. His body was covered with dark pigment, he turned into a real monster, with a kind of pipes on his back, from which the chakra escaped and appendages in the form of blades on his elbows. At the same time, the physical parameters and the level of the chakra grew so much that Naruto barely had time to notice the fist that flew into his chest, the speed of which was simply stunning, since Judo turned his hand into a kind of rocket engine. Flying 20 meters away and feeling the taste of blood in his mouth, the blonde realized that at this rate he would simply die, and also moved to the second level of printing. However, after a few seconds of the fight, he realized that his seal was just a pathetic semblance of Judo's abilities. Even being on the second level of Juin, the cursed seal of Orochimaru, he managed to dodge only half of the attacks. Naruto flew all over the hall, and even his already fast, and now even accelerated regeneration by the seal cannot cope with the damage received. The kid already felt the breath of death behind his back when he remembered about another trump card, which, however, he had never used, the power of Kyuubi. He had no other choice, and therefore he completely focused on one thought: Kyuubi, give your strength here, otherwise we will both die. After a few moments, it seemed to him that he heard a terrible rumbling voice whispering, "Impudent boy," and his body began to fill with a terrible, but extremely powerful chakra that gave him such power that the blonde could not restrain his scream. After a few seconds, Naruto was already standing on all four limbs like an animal, and his body was completely covered with red chakras that took the form of a fox's body. Strangely enough, under this cover from the chakra, Orochimaru noticed that the blonde's hair, eyes and skin had returned to normal, even pigmentation had disappeared. The Kyuubi chakra completely eliminated the effects caused by Juin. But the cover was finally formed, right down to the tip of the tail, and Naruto growled, so much so that an explosive wave swept through the hall, and Judo came to himself from an attack of bloodlust. However, this did not save him from the impact of the chakra paw, which slammed him into the wall with such force that he lost consciousness. However, the blonde man, who got into a rage, intoxicated by the power of Biju, did not think to stop. The next blow of the chakra paw was supposed to smear Judo on the wall, so it had to be blocked by the great Orochimaru with the help of the Rashomon gate, and Naruto himself was driven into the wall by the blade of Kusunagi's sword sticking out of Sannin's mouth. This blow against the wall brought the young Namikaze to his senses, the cover was absorbed back into his body, and the exhausted baby just passed out. Orochimaru, terribly pleased with his student, as well as with the successful experiment, summoned a shadow clone, who was ordered to deliver the battered Judo to the doctors. Sannin himself went to his student in order to record the results of the experiment, and at the same time check his well-being. When he approached Naruto, who was lying unconscious, he did not find a trace of the cursed seal on his shoulder. After checking more carefully, including with the help of medical techniques, he was forced to state that the cursed seal could not stand the proximity of the Kyuubi chakra and burned down. The blonde was absolutely healthy, only very exhausted, and his fainting had already passed into a healthy sleep, so Sannin just took him to his room to rest and gain strength for new workouts, summoning, Rashomon's Gate, 5/5 gates. Ranks BS ninjutsu of protection, with which the user invokes a gate that seems indestructible. Breaking through these gates is not an easy task. Enhanced version, the user summons 3 gates of Rashomon. The first gate, red, stops frontal attacks, the second gate, green, slows down the attack, the third gate, blue, reduces the pressure on the first and second gates. The maximum version is the 5 gates of Rashomon. She is able to withstand even a Biju bomb and resist at the same time. For the next year, Naruto was engaged in further development of the snake style, studied techniques and, of course, studied new ones. New techniques that have replenished his arsenal during this time have brought the blonde even closer to his mentor, because he has studied what Orochimaru has always been so disliked and feared, various summoning techniques, mostly snake and the simplest, but extremely useful forbidden techniques. And now, having already celebrated his 10th birthday, the heir of the Namikaze clan was practicing blows on another dummy in his already native training hall number 3 and recalled all the sparring that he had held in this hall this year. Over the past time, he has managed to fight with Judo and Kimimaro more than once, fought with Guren, Kadamaru, Sakan and his Siamese twin Yukon, both together and separately, Jirobu, Taiyuya and many other test subjects and subordinates of the great snake Sannin. However, he never used the cover again, as the mentor forbade and ordered everyone to immediately stop the fight at the slightest threat of the release of the Kyubi chakra, explaining that the blonde's body is not yet ready for such loads. He gained a lot of combat experience and greatly developed his STC, which allowed him to use more powerful B-rank techniques that had not been given to him before, and even several A-rank techniques, but after using them, his chakra channels ached for several days. This turned his thoughts to memories of how exactly he mastered these new techniques and practiced them, a slice of time. Events of the last year of Namikaze Naruto's life. After a memorable fight with Judo, Naruto was forced to lie in bed for 3 days, due to severe burns of the SCC due to which he could not move. Therefore, as soon as he managed to get up, he immediately just settled in the training room, training until he lost consciousness. For about a week, Orochimaru did not interfere with him and just waited for the guy's fuse to subside. However, he not only did not subside, but on the contrary grew. The blonde himself, without asking permission, called Jiroba to fight, and after losing to him with a bang, continued his self-torture. Sannin finally got tired of these antics, and he personally came to the training hall, where he shook his student thoroughly and assigned him a new training regime, which includes not only taijutsu classes, but also classes with Sannin himself in the laboratory and office. For 4 months, he studied with his mentor, comprehending his wisdom, dissecting corpses, studying forbidden techniques, such as a copy of the face of the murdered. And a dead soul, worked out the technology of installing the cursed seal on the test subjects and transferring it to the 2nd level. Along the way, he also begged for other techniques that sensei used in everyday life, the seal of paralysis, with the help of which the violent test subjects were restrained, a ringing spherical barrier, helping to prevent unwanted persons from entering unnoticed, as well as a sound suppression barrier used to avoid spreading the screams of people being opened alive throughout the shelter. After these 4 months, one interesting incident occurred in which Naruto managed to learn the technique of the air core. It happened like this. Orochimaru took his student on a walk through the country of rice fields, the purpose of which was to collect rare ingredients, the collection of which could not be entrusted to subordinates, and, of course, information. And when they had already collected everything they needed to return to the shelter, some small blonde asshole attacked Sannin, brandishing a large sharpened piece of metal, which for some reason he called a sword. Seeing that Orochimaru playfully escapes from under his blows, the kid threw away his useless piece of scrap metal and, folding the seals, attacked with a water core, which was easily turned into water dust, twice as powerful with an air core. Naruto managed to see exactly how the mentor used the technique and firmly decided to shake the details out of the teacher in order to study it himself. Meanwhile, Sannin had already turned the boy into a cocoon, wrapping him with snakes and confident in his victory, if you can call it that, relaxed. As it turned out in vain. As soon as Orochimaru turned away, the blonde turned his body into water, getting out of the cocoon in this way. Gathering himself back, he snatched out a kunai and tried to pierce the snake Sannin, but he was prevented by snakes that flew out of Naruto's sleeve and turned him into a fountain of spray. Orochimaru, who had turned around for a long time, watched with interest as this puddle of water turned into a boy again. Deciding that the guy was a worthy object for research, the snake simply formed several seals and put the seal of the 5 elements on him, sealing his chakra, after which the guy could not fight, he could not move normally. From the subsequent interrogation, it became known that the guy's name is Hozuki Suigetsu. He is from the village of Hidden Mist and came here to kill Orochimaru, who killed his brother, Hozuki Mangetsu. He is an excellent Kenjutsu master, as he was trained by one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, Momochi Zabuza, until he left the village. Also good in the techniques of the element of water, but extremely weak against the element of lightning due to its peculiarity, the ability to disintegrate into water. After the interrogation, Naruto thoughtfully said to the mentor, "Sensei, this guy, Suigetsu, if it wasn't for his thirst for revenge on you, he would have been a great addition to the Kimimaro squad. Yes, you're right, he is a wonderful object for research and experiments." And about the thirst for revenge. I didn't kill Hozuki Mungetsu. Yes, we fought with him, but I did not finish him off, but on the contrary, I wanted to take him with me to conduct experiments, but the Umbu Fog squad that arrived at the scene of the fight prevented me from doing so. I do not know what happened to him next, but I can assume that he was involved in a coup plan that was prepared by your mentor Momochi Zabuza and he was executed by his own, replied Sannin. Hearing this, Suigetsu fell out of reality for a while, thinking about what he heard. After thinking it over, he came to the conclusion that maybe Sannin wasn't lying, so he asked, "Why should I believe you? I have no need to lie to you, because I would be glad if you joined the ranks of the shinobi of sound. Of course, first I will examine you thoroughly and conduct a few experiments, but then you will be able to start training and eventually even have a chance to join the elite of sound." After considering the prospects, Suigetsu came to the conclusion that he had no other choice, because he escaped from the hidden fog, and, consequently, was declared a nuke-nin. In general, he had to agree, after which he was released from the seal and the 3 of them continued on their way to the shelter. On the way, Naruto managed to shake out the details of using the air core technique from Orochimaru, who was in a good mood. Arriving at the shelter, Orochimaru told the blonde to go to his room and train, and he himself, taking Suigetsu with him, went to the laboratory. 2 weeks later, when Sannin finished with the research and experiments on the new shinobi sound, he gathered all the members of the Kimimaro squad, as well as Suigetsu and Naruto, in a clearing near the shelter. When everyone gathered, he introduced the newcomer to everyone and made a statement, "Stop whispering," then discussed the new one. "Today I have gathered you, my most gifted young shinobi, for one purpose. And it consists in this, even though I am an S-rank shinobi, but this does not mean that I do not need to train, so now you are 9.5 stooges, pa-sakan/yukon go for 1.5, you will attack me, and trying to kill me. Let's get started." Literally a second after the end of the speech, Sannin had to dodge the young talents attacking him from all sides. Attacked, who in what much? Kimimara's bones flew into the snake, a block of earth from Jirobu, Kadamaru's web, crystal shuriken's Guren, and in general everything that could come into the heads of young shinobi. However, not a single attack overtook Auric. He was saved by his huge experience, 10 times greater than that of his rivals, and the absolute lack of coordinated actions on the part of the enemy. For more than 20 minutes, he only defended himself. However, only twice he had to use techniques, reverse summoning, in order to protect himself from a real shower of crystal shurikens by simply beating them off with his own and summoning the Rashomon Gate to stop the bone drill of Kimimaro. Even the transition to the second level of the cursed seal did not help the youth to hook their mentor. Orochimaru waited until the guys dispersed to the fullest, laid out all their trumps and only then, without straining, knocked them all out in less than a minute. When they came to their senses, Sannin told them how disappointed he was. The absence of even the simplest interaction between you led to the fact that you often hurt your comrades with your ill-conceived attacks. Due to the fact that now I need to leave the shelter on business for quite a long time, then continue training yourself, but as soon as I return, you will have team interaction training and missions for the benefit of the village of sound, where you will practice this interaction on a real enemy. A week later, Sannin left the village of sound, having managed to tell Naruto in detail before leaving about how to use the callback and the call of the Rashomon Gate so that he could train in their use on his own. He learned from Sensei what seals are needed for them, how and where to concentrate the chakra and which parts of the tattoo on his hands are responsible for these techniques. He also advised practicing the call of snakes and learning from those called about the ways of interaction or any other techniques related to the snake contract. The result of these trainings, which the blonde has been engaged in for the last 8 months, was working out the technique of summoning snakes to automatism, studying such techniques as snake stomach trap, snake vessel prison, and a fast poisonous fog. About the ways of using which the snakes told him. The end of the time slice. For 8 months now, Orochimaru had not been in the shelter, and this was very upsetting to Naruto, because there was no one to train him, and independent training gave much less effect. A little variety and the opportunity to practice what he learned gave sparring with members of the Seven of Sound, but even they were not so attracted to the blonde, because he had already defeated 4 of the 7. Only Jugo, Guren, and Kimimaro were still stronger than him. It was precisely because of idleness that young Namikaze was simply killing time, indulging in memories and beating the poor dummy. He was already about to go to prison, grab a couple of test subjects with a cursed seal there and challenge them to a fight in which life is at stake. But these plans were thwarted by Kimimaro, who came to him, who made him an offer. "Hello Naruto. How about taking a walk up into the woods and having a big fight there?" A very tempting offer. "Come on." The blonde man replied, grinning happily. They climbed up, left the shelter into the forest and went to the very clearing where they had fought with Sannin more than half a year earlier. When they arrived at the place, they began the battle, so far only in taijutsu and quite slowly, but gradually accelerating. However, the guys were unaware that 4 people were watching them. Let's go back to the events of 2 years ago, when the great third Hokage decided to tell his students unpleasant news. Tsunade. 2 years ago, Senju Tsunade, the princess of the now-defunct Senju clan, a disciple of the third Hokage with the title of Sannin and the best medic in the world, was doing her favorite thing, losing money in another casino, confirming her nickname, the legendary sucker. Her student Shizune was sitting next to them, holding their pet pig Tun-Tun in her arms, and looked with horror at how incredibly fast the pile of chips lying in front of her mentor was melting. 10 minutes later, Tsunade, who had already lost all the chips, left the casino and sighed heavily for another debt hanging on her, looked up at the sky. After a few seconds, her eyes widened in surprise. She noticed a male hawk in the sky, which was clearly flying towards her. She raised her hand, letting the hawk land, and immediately began to take out a letter from the case. She was very interested in what Sensei needed from her, because no one else knew how to make the bird find her. Taking out the letter and handing the hawk to Shizune, she unfolded the scroll and began to read. "Tsunade, my beloved student, I am writing to you in order to inform you of not very pleasant news. 4 years ago, Orochimaru was expelled from the village for conducting experiments on people. On the same day, your godson, Naruto Uzumaki, was abducted. For a long time we didn't know who had abducted him and why. The only trace was 3 dead Chunins on the fortress wall. Their bodies were simply crushed to a pulp, so we could not determine who did it, and the Umbu sent to search for nothing found." Here Tsunade stopped and cursed, "Damn it. It's been 4 years, and he's only writing now." Taking her soul away, she began to read further. "However, today a girl came to me, you should remember her. Her name is Mitarashi Anko. She is the first and only student of Orochimaru and told one very entertaining story. She trained in the summoning technique in the forest near Konoha, and one of the snakes she called recommended her to look into the contract scroll. And do you know what she saw there? The last name in the scroll is Namikaze Naruto. Do you understand what this means? It was Naruto who took Orochimaru 4 years ago when he left the village. He violated the decisions made by the village council. He told the boy the truth about his parents, which he should not have known, and even teaches him. Do you have any idea who he's going to grow out of a guy, given his penchant for forbidden techniques? And what can he do with it, conducting his inhuman experiments on it. I really ask you to find them and return the boy to Konoha before it's too late. Sincerely, your sensei, Sarutobi Hiruzen. After reading the letter, Tsunade was not angry, no, she was furious. This old fart not only forbade me or Jiraiya to take our godson, but also allowed him to be stolen. And to whom? This cold-blooded reptile, Orochimaru. And what is most disgusting, he is upset not by the fact that Minato and Kushina's son was stolen from his village, but by the fact that Orochimaru kidnapped the boy and told him about his parents, thereby depriving Konoha of her main weapon, Jinchuriki. And he also asks me to find them and return the baby to the village. Even if I accidentally stumble upon them, I would rather help Orochimaru raise Minato's son than return him to this hole. Having finished her monologue, Tsunade allowed Shizune to let go of the hawk, since she is not going to write an answer. After that, I caught my breath and decided that after this, I definitely needed to fix my nerves and directed my feet to the nearest bar with more or less decent sake. Jiraiya, the same day 2 years ago, the great toad hermit from Mount Mebukuzan, a disciple of the third Hokage and Sannin Jiraiya, as usual, woke up quite late, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and with his head splitting apart. Somehow getting up and putting himself in relative order, he went downstairs, paid for the room and went to the nearest bar to improve his health and have breakfast at the same time. Half an hour later, he went outside with a more or less meaningful look and a head that had returned to normal, after which he began to decide which hot springs to go to today in search of inspiration for a new book. But then Sannin heard the flapping of wings and the chirping of birds above his head. Looking up, he saw a male hawk with the emblem of fire and immediately realized that this was a letter from the mentor. Calling the bird, he took the letter and immediately released the hawk, as he did not even think to write an answer. After the winged postman flew away, he unfolded the scroll and went deep into reading. Jiraiya, I am writing to you in order to inform you of not very pleasant news. 4 years ago, as you well know, Orochimaru was expelled from the village for conducting experiments on people. On the same day, your godson, Naruto Uzumaki, was abducted. For a long time we didn't know who had abducted him and why. The only trace was 3 dead chunins on the fortress wall. Their bodies were simply crushed to a pulp, so we could not determine who did it, and the Umbu sent out to search for nothing. However, today a student of Orochimaru, Enko, came to me and told me a very interesting story. She was training in the summoning technique in the forest near Konoha, and one of the snakes she called recommended her to look at the contract scroll. And do you know what she saw there? The last name in the scroll is Namikaze Naruto. Do you understand what this means? It was Naruto who took Orochimaru 4 years ago when he left the village. He violated the decisions made by the village council. He told the boy the truth about his parents, which he should not have known, and even teaches him. Do you have any idea who he's going to grow out of a guy, given his penchant for forbidden techniques? And what can he do with it, conducting his inhuman experiments on it? I really ask you to find them and return the boy to Konoha before it's too late. Your sensei, Sarutobi Hiruzen. After finishing the reading, Jiraiya even turned a little pale, imagining how Minato's son could grow up with such a role model in front of him. Jiraiya knew that being brought up by a man like Orochimaru, Naruto would definitely not inherit the will of his parents' fire, but would grow up to be a cruel and unscrupulous person. In addition, the toad hermit was afraid that the snake Sannin would ruin the child with his experiments, just as he had already ruined hundreds of lives. Therefore, his thoughts were as follows: Orochimaru, traitor. Not only did several dozen residents of Konoha die at his hands, but he also took Minato's son. He's going to ruin the guy. We urgently need to find them and return Naruto to the village. Maybe it's not too late. Thinking so, Sannin changed his mind and did not go to the hot springs to collect information, but headed for the exit of the city, intending to start looking for Orochimaru right now. Let's get back to what's happening with Orochimaru. Orochimaru, the moment of leaving the sound. A week has passed since that memorable massacre, where 9.5 young, talented shinobi could not even scratch him. During this week, the snake gave instructions to all his students, to whom, what to do and what to train. Having finished his business and gathered himself, he decided to think about the route of his journey, pursuing several goals, collecting ingredients and information, communicating with the right people, searching for new young talents, and most importantly, searching for Senju Tsunade, whose help he needed since, while conducting the last examination, he found Kimimaro, the second most powerful of his students, a strange disease that Sannin himself could not cure. For the rational achievement of all these goals, he decided to first walk through the small countries, and so as not to wander into the territory of the 5 great countries. For example, he really did not want to mess with the hidden cloud, at least for now, and only then to visit the land of fire to search for Tsunade. For the first couple of months, nothing interesting happened. He collected information, made inquiries about Tsunade, communicated with influential and rich people, offering his services, and at the same time learning about where the money of the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans could be stored, but quickly came to the conclusion that they were all in the land of fire and it was necessary to look there. Having made the decision to go to the land of fire right now, it is not known how long the search for Senju will take, and it is necessary to find out about the inheritance of his beloved disciple. In the land of fire, there were only 3 sufficiently large and old banks that could have accounts from ancient clans. These were, the Bank of Konoha, the Bank of Fire, the main state bank, and the Bank of the Nozaka family, founded at one time by a very rich and intelligent merchant. Konoha's bank was located in the village of the same name and served only shinobi, but Sannin's path was ordered there. The central department of the Bank of Fire was located in the capital. It was also not very reasonable to appear there, so Orochimaru decided to look into the Bank of the Nozaka family, whose central office was located in the town of Kanzaku, near the former border with the Whirlpool country, and therefore there was a great chance that the Uzumaki kept at least part of their fortune there. The nearest way to this city, not through the land of fire, lay through the land of grass. That's where the snake Sannin went. A few weeks later, when he had almost crossed the land of grass, Sannin felt a slightly strange, fear-filled chakra. Deciding to see what was going on there, he rushed into the forest, where he felt a surge of energy. When he reached the place, Sannin saw the following picture: a little girl, about 10 years old, with red hair and red eyes, trembling with fear, pressed her back against a tree, and a huge bear was hanging over her, already raising its paw to strike. Without hesitating for a moment, Orochimaru threw the bear away with the help of snakes and threw several shurikens soaked in wind chakra after him. After making sure that the beast was dead, he turned to the girl and asked, "What's your name, baby? And what are you doing here alone?" "My name is Karen, mister. Thank you for saving me. And I'm here because bandits attacked my native village, but I managed to escape into the forest, where I came across a bear, which drove me to this clearing." The girl replied in a trembling voice, strange. I feel quite a large amount of chakra in you, so why didn't you kill this beast yourself?" Sannin asked the question that really interested him. "I don't know how to fight, sir." "And what is a chakra?" Karen asked. This question struck the snake so much that he fell out of reality for a few seconds, and thoughts flashed through his head. She doesn't even know what a chakra is. So where did she get such a large supply of chakra? Because it takes a lot of practice. And anyway, if she doesn't know how to fight, then why did I save her? Because she's useless to me. Although, perhaps she has some other abilities. Deciding to clarify this, Orochimaru asked, "You don't know how to fight, right? But you have some other special abilities, don't you?" "Yes, sir. I can sense any person at a great distance, and if it's someone familiar, then I can determine who it is. And also, if people bite me, their wounds heal very quickly. The little girl replied. Hearing this, Sannin realized that he was facing a talented censor and potentially a very capable medic, whose chakra is healing in itself. It was a very valuable acquisition, so he suggested, "You have nowhere to go, am I right?" "Yes, sir." "Then, if you want, you can come with me. I will teach you the art of shinobi, and over time, you will become a very strong medic." "Do you agree?" "Yes, sir." Karen exclaimed joyfully, having just found not only a new home, but also a teacher. After receiving consent, Orochimaru cured the scratches received by the girl during the race through the forest and continued his journey to the land of fire with her, along the way telling her that he was now traveling, collecting rare herbs, and along the way looking for his old girlfriend, who is, at the moment, the best shinobi medic in the world. 10 days later, Snake Sannin and his new student, to whom he had been telling the theory all the way to keep himself occupied, arrived in the city of Kenzaku. There, Orochimaru quickly managed to arrange a meeting with the owner of the bank, because he was still not the last person in quite a famous shinobi. Arriving at the central office at the appointed time, and going up to the office of the owner of the bank, he identified himself to the secretary and waited until he was invited inside. They did not make him wait long. After a few minutes he asked the owner the questions he was interested in. And here's what he found out: there really was an account of the Uzumaki clan in this bank, in which, according to the owner of the bank, they kept about half of their fortune, and that the heir of the blood of this clan could easily access this money. For this you only need to pass a DNA test at any branch of the bank. In addition, he offered Sannin very favorable conditions for a completely anonymous contribution, not by DNA, but by a keyword and at a good percentage. The snake liked the proposed conditions so much that he opened an account in his own name, where he put all the money he had, and it was not a small amount. They parted completely satisfied with each other. For the next few months, Orochimaru and Karen just wandered around the land of fire, not staying in one place and trying to catch the elusive Tsunade, and now, after almost 4 months of wandering, they finally came out on her trail. Following on her heels, they arrived in a small town on the border with the land of the earth, where Orochimaru turned into the first bar he came across, hoping to make inquiries about Tsunade. Imagine his surprise when he noticed her at one of the tables in the far corner of the establishment. Delighted that his search was finally over, the snake Sannin approached the table and said, "Well, hello Tsunade. You, it turns out, are quite difficult to find. I've spent a lot of time on this. And next to you, it's probably Shizun. And you've grown up a lot, baby. I'm glad to see you. What do you need, Orochimaru? You obviously didn't just waste your precious time looking for me, but you could have spent it on experiments," Tsunade replied in a tired voice with notes of sarcasm. "Hello Orochimaru-san, I won't say, really, that I'm glad to see you. Who is this girl with you?" "Oh, yes. I forgot to imagine, this is Karen, a girl from the land of grass, whom I saved while I was looking for you. Her village was attacked by robbers, burned it to the ground and killed all the inhabitants. She is the only survivor, and that is due to the fact that she is a talented censor and potentially a very good medic, so I invited her to become one of my students." "One of the students? Since when did you love teaching children?" "As far as I remember, when sensei blackmailed you into taking one student, you then whined every day, 'Take this monster away from me.' Isn't that right?" Senju asked in a more cheerful voice, teasing an old friend. "You chose the wrong sensei for yourself, girl." Shizun muttered meanwhile, "Well, firstly, many years have passed since then to Tsunade and I managed to change. And secondly, Anko was really a bad student, she had neither perseverance nor talent. Now I can say I have 10 students and Karen is the 11th. True, she will be the only one among them who does not specialize in battles. 11 students. You're crazy. It's impossible to keep track of so many students at the same time." Sannin exclaimed in amazement, now there are no incompetents among my students who need to be monitored from morning to night. I make up curricula, and they are mostly engaged on their own, only in the most important or difficult moments I look after them personally, or with the help of shadow cloning. Only one student I follow almost constantly. This is my best and most beloved student who never ceases to amaze me with his perseverance and talent, Orochimaru explained calmly and slowly, extremely pleased with how the conversation is developing. Apparently you really have changed over these 10 years, Orochimaru. Okay, come on, why did you come? I decided to get to the point of Tsunade, so you don't believe that I can just come and chat? Well, you're doing the right thing. I came for several reasons, but they all boil down to one thing. I need your help to Tsunade. The snake decided to lay out everything directly, without cunning and without dodging. After his confession that he needed help, there was such a shock on the faces of Tsunade and Shizun that their eyes risked falling out of their orbits. Slightly recovering, Tsunade decided to clarify, what exactly do you need my help with? Are you sick? No, it's all right with me. I know my body almost cell by cell, but with one of my students. I found signs of an unknown disease in him, which I could not cure myself. I'm afraid it is connected with his Kakei Genkai and may lead to his death, and he is the second in strength and talent among my students. I don't want to lose him. In addition, my medical talents are not enough to fully track the changes in the bodies of my students, and they are almost all special children. Yes, and Karen needs to be taught medicine, and I'm not as strong in this as you. In short, I suggest that you and Shizun move to my village of sound, a hidden village created by me, and do the medical part, as well as help me in my research concerning medicines, drugs and other branches of medicine. I promise not to involve you in experiments on people. Orochimaru spoke soulfully, with such enthusiasm that he was even a little out of breath at the end of the speech. The women listened attentively and did not even try to interrupt him. Shizun thought it over faster and answered, this is out of the question. You are an apostate and a traitor. Shut up, Shizun. Tsunade barked. Orochimaru. My answer will depend on how you answer one of my questions. Ask, I will answer the truth to any of your questions. What did you do with my godson, kidnapped by you from Konoha 6 years ago? With Naruto? Nothing. He is the most beloved and talented student of mine, Namikaze Naruto. I told him the truth about my parents, about you and Jiraiya, about the Kubi sealed in him. After the story, he asked me to teach him the art of shinobi, and now 6 years later, I can say with confidence that he will grow up to be one of the strongest shinobi in the world. When I left the village of sound 7 months ago, he could already use techniques of rank E, D, and C, and if he really wanted to, then B, but they are difficult. He learns very quickly, is persistent and talented. He was able to perform the snake summoning technique from the second time. And yet, Tsunade, don't be surprised when you see him. I became not only a mentor for him, I practically replaced his father, so he is very similar to me. He adopted a snake-like appearance, adopted my bad habit of licking his lips, and in general most of his behavior. Well, then. You answered my question, and in some detail. We will go with you. I want to see for myself your students, your village, and especially my godson. Yes, and it is necessary to help that sick child and teach this baby, if she is really as capable as you say, Senju said thoughtfully, agreeing to the invitation of an old friend and ignoring Shizun's awesome look. After that, it was decided to move out in the morning, otherwise Orochimaru was afraid that his hot students would not destroy the village, suffering from idleness. Having finished with the discussion, they sent Karen to sleep under the supervision of Shizun, and they ordered sake and spent half the night sitting and reminiscing. A few weeks later, near the village of sound, Orochimaru, Tsunade, Shizun and Karen were already approaching the end point of their journey when they heard the noise of the battle. Hurrying to the source of the sound, they saw a clearing where 2 guys were fighting. Seeing who it was, Snake Sannin relaxed and whispered to the others, "Look carefully, this is my pride, two of my best students are Namikaze Naruto and Kagaya Kimamaru. Your godson Tsunade and the guy who needs to be cured." After hearing Orochimaru's explanation, all four of them focused their attention on what was happening. And the action unfolding there was really worth watching. Two guys, one white-haired, with green eyes, two red dots on his forehead and in a classic gray kimono, belted with an ordinary rope. The second had blue eyes with vertical pupils, long yellow hair almost to the waist, and earrings in the shape of 5 pointed stars in his ears. He was dressed in a set of a black, unbuttoned jacket decorated with 2 purple snakes and red fire on the cuffs, on a bare torso, and black pants, whose legs were decorated with the same fire as on the jacket. Both have classic shinobi sandals on their feet. At first, Naruto and Kimamaru just fought in taijutsu, but in it the blonde was losing heavily to his opponent, so almost immediately he began to use techniques. Snakes began to fly out of his sleeves and pants, and the lengthening tongue tried to grab the opponent and properly attach it to the ground. Kimamaru responded by growing a small bone blade from his shoulder, with which he began to chop down those snakes that were dangerously close to his body. Kagaya still significantly outperformed his opponent in speed, so Naruto soon received a rather long and deep scratch on his chest. Hissing in pain, he jumped away, bit through his left finger, ran it over his right palm, and instantly formed the necessary seals, hit the ground with his right hand, shouting at the same time, "Summoning technique, Zeltus." There was a bang, clouds of smoke appeared, and from them a huge snake of dark purple color. "Zeltus, give me the poison," the blond man shouted, folding the dragon seal and taking in more air in his chest. The snake exhaled a whole cloud of poison, and Namikaze spat out a huge, but not very dense air core towards Kimamaru, which flew through this cloud, thereby directing all the poison into the white-haired one. However, a few seconds later, he emerged from the cloud unharmed. After all, his face was completely covered with a bone mask, which did not allow him to inhale poison, and, raising his hand, shot Naruto with the phalanges of his own fingers. The attack was quick, but the blonde managed to react and, having printed out several shurikens from the seals on his hands, repelled the attack with them. But still, it gave Kagaya enough time, and he managed to turn his right hand into a huge bone drill. The blond man, seeing this, abruptly took off his jacket and ran a bloody stripe on the inside of his wrist with a bitten finger. About his appearance without a jacket, it is worth mentioning separately, both of the guy's hands from the wrist to the elbow were covered with strange black tattoos that Orochimaru had once done to him, but something appeared on his back that surprised the snake Sannin himself, a huge, full, torso, colored tattoo of a furiously growling Kyuubi, whose 9 tails entwined the guy's body. But let's return to what is happening in the clearing. After drawing a bloody streak and noticing that Kimamaru was already rushing towards him, Naruto folded the seals, hit the ground with both hands and shouted, "Summoning technique, Rashomon Gate." With a loud bang, a huge red gate appeared, with the face of a demon painted on it. A moment after that, a decent dent appeared in the gate from the impact of a bone drill, which began to gradually grow, threatening to break through the gate. Without wasting a moment, the blonde began to fold a new sequence of seals, and as soon as the drill broke through the protection, which disappeared in a puff of smoke, Naruto immediately put a seal on his opponent's hand and jumped back and folded the seal, shouting at the same time, "Printing technique, printing paralysis." The technique used by the young Namikaze bound Kimamaru, not allowing him to move, but the white-haired one was considered the strongest young shinobi in the village of Sound for a reason. He cursed and activated the cursed seal. His body was covered with black pigment forming a pattern of straight lines, and the greatly increased power and volume of the chakra destroyed the blonde's technique. Then Naruto decided to lay out his last trump card and applied the summoning technique, prison of the snake vessel, and in the place where Kimamaru had just stood, there was now a huge, motionless snake. Orochimaru, seeing what technique his student used, almost lost his eyes, and in response to the questioning looks of the women, he could only croak one thing: this is a rank A technique. Naruto, meanwhile, was on his knees and breathing heavily. His chakra channels were burning with fire, because the A-rank techniques were still too complicated for his 10-year-old body, although the chakra reserve allowed them to be used, but the SCC was not yet ready to work with such volumes. The only thing that pleased him now was the victory over Kimimaro. But he rejoiced early. The snake suddenly swelled from the inside and disappeared with a pop, and instead there was Kaguya, who moved to the second level of the seal, with a tail and surrounded by a forest of bones, which began to be drawn back into his body right before his eyes. The blonde was about to get up and try to continue the fight, but Orochimaru, who came out into the clearing, barked, "Enough," and the guys instantly forgot about the fight, rushed to the teacher with greetings and questions where he had been missing for so long, as well as complaining about the deadly boredom that has been overcoming them lately. Sannin answered only one thing to this: you can forget about boredom, in a couple of days you will dream about it. Sensei informed them in a voice that did not bode well. Meanwhile, women came out of the forest and Orochimaru decided to introduce them. Naruto, Kimimaro, meet Senju Tsunade, her student Shizune, and our new girl Karen. Is this 20-year-old girl my godmother? But she must be in her late 50s. The blonde man exclaimed, firstly, hello Naruto, and secondly, never mention my age again. Tsunade snapped, flushed with anger. She uses medical equipment that rejuvenates the body, but only while there is a chakra. As soon as the chakra ends, she will turn into an old woman. The snake decided to clarify, for which he received a blow from Tsunade's fist in his poor head, after which he flew to the nearest tree and immediately changed his body, since the old one, after such a blow, was irretrievably lost. Okay, Orochimaru, let's show us our office so that we can immediately start examining and treating those who really need it. And we'll talk to you Naruto a little later, when you get back to normal after today's battle, and I'll examine and heal everyone who needs to. Tsunade said. That's right, Auntie Tsunade, I understand you, Namikaze reported, impressed by the power of her blow and not wanting to try it on himself, because he won't be able to use the chakra for a couple of days. Yes, Tsunade, let's go, I'll show you your rooms and laboratories. Kimimaro, come to laboratory number 17 in half an hour, you will be the first to be examined. And warn the other 7.5, said the snake Sannin, who had already returned to normal, and led the women to the shelter for an excursion. That's the end of it.